start our meeting. And is it Andrew or Mary, can I ask you to kind of give this spiel about how we're doing in a hybrid meeting?
Sure thing. So thank you all for joining us for the Cpdc hearing of May 15th, 2023. We are here tonight. We have in person through the Cpdc chair Heather Klisch, Vice Chair John Weston and Mark Wetzel. On Zoom is members Tony Diarezzo and Pamela Adrian. We're running a hybrid setup, so we have members attending in the audience here and members attending on Zoom. For members in the audience, we ask that you please sign in the corner if you haven't already. And for members on Zoom, please use your full name on the Zoom program and you will remain muted until the chair acknowledges you. So what we'll look to do is follow the Cpdc's normal process. The applicant is going to give their presentation to the board. The board will provide comment and question amongst themselves and then open to public comment. If you are on Zoom and do have public comment or question, please use the raise hand feature found under reactions or simply turn on your camera and raise your hand yourself and we will look to get you to the chair to ask your question. Outside of that, the only thing I can add is that this meeting is being recorded and broadcasted by RCTV locally, and we should be good to go. I hope so. A little nervous right now.
Alrighty, our first item up is a sign permit application for 47 Herndon Street, Anton's Cleaners. There's the video there.
Do that. Sorry, Pam is asking to be unmuted.
Do I go to the podium?
Yes, please.
Oh,
Good to go?
yes, and I can add that I can share your application on the screen as well.
Wonderful. Thank you and good evening. My name is Jeff Sarah with Batten Brothers Signs here on behalf of the Anton's Cleaners, where they're obviously their sign company, have been for a long time now. So over at 47 Herndon, they are looking to update the front of the building. They're going to remove all the existing awnings. They're going to be painting all the window mullions and the trim black. And they are looking to install a sign cabinet on the front of the building. The building's all glass, as you're probably aware of, or not, because you can't see it behind the awnings. But so they're looking to install the 29-inch by 168-inch sign with external lighting over their storefront. Their storefront's 60 foot in width. The sign meets the criteria for square footage and illumination. I did see a notation that lighting details are to be submitted later. And as I was coming here, I realized that the light is the same type of lighting that's on North Shore Bank, which is next door to them, if that helps give any clarification on what the intent is. So I can answer any questions you may have. I know there wasn't a period in that either, by the way. I just kind of rambled on.
I can't remember off the top of my head what the light is like at North Shore Bank, but you said it's down lighting?
Correct.
Okay.
Tony
Questions?
has his hand raised on the.
Thank you.
In the business B district, we only allow halo lighting. We don't allow external lighting.
I believe external illumination is allowed. It's internal illumination that's prohibited.
Okay. Unfortunately, my setup today is a little different than I'm usually used to.
No worries.
Okay. And is there any consideration about the large standalone sign?
We're not, we know that the town has issue with that sign, but they're not addressing that sign at this particular time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission?
Nothing here.
I'm all set.
So I guess the just to be clear, right, the Anton's Cleaners sign, right, it's all laid out there. Is the intent that the sign for the other tenant on the building, the sign would be the same aluminum sign background with the, you know,
Yeah, the intent is that when that tenant is ready, that the sign would be built.
that these sign details could be the
Exactly the
same,
but with
same
their
thing
logo.
with different letters, okay,
That's 100% correct.
okay, okay.
Any other from the commission?
No.
Okay, any comments from the public? Any raised hands?
Oh, Tony?
Tony, go ahead.
Sorry, the mute button is killing me. Anyhow, so for the lighting, what's the plan for when the lighting is? Will it be turned off at any times?
We hadn't actually discussed that at all. Does the bylaw set limits? A lot of times they do for, off by, 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. or whatever that may be.
We don't have a bylaw regulation on it. We ask for the dark sky compliant lighting and sometimes conditioned after close of business, but we understand sometimes, maybe a bit later into the evening might be appropriate as well.
Okay. I'm not sure what time the existing signage goes off, or actually.
It does get, I know that the standalone sign gets turned off at some point.
Yeah, it's at some point. I mean,
Yes.
It would go off. I just don't know what that time would be. Like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock seems like a reasonable time. It's.
It's earlier.
I think it
I-
actually might be
just-
earlier than that, but
Is there a condition on the current signage for lighting?
Do not believe so, though I can check the North Shore Bank.
I only say that because I don't notice it on very often. But, I mean,
I'll say I notice it on in the middle of the winter,
Yeah.
when it's 6 o'clock, it's pitch black out
and it's still
and it's
open.
all and it's on, right?
Yeah.
And it should be. But I don't notice it, if I'm driving like through town late at night that it's, that it's there.
I mean, it's reasonable I think it's reasonable to expect it to be on after the close of business for a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
Given that it's, gets dark at, I don't know what now, 8 o'clock or something like that. So not all night long, clearly, but to shut it off when the business closes seems like it doesn't allow, visibility. Does North Shore have a?
There's no specific condition tied to it on timing, at least in the certificate of appropriateness, but
Could I talk to Anton's Cleaners and ask them about that and get back to you guys after the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because if we're not approving the lighting now, and I don't know if we.
Right, I actually have a question about this, where are we being asked to approve the certificate of appropriateness without the additional lighting specifications?
that was the proposed condition.
What sort of specifications do you need on the lighting? Other than me telling you it's like next door.
Typically look for like lumens, temperature, kind of just the general, that and what shielding proponents it might have on it to meet the dark sky.
Again, not to keep jumping back to North Shore Bank, but do they have the criteria? Because we can match that if that's an acceptable criteria, and then possibly this can be approved at a staff level. Is that
I think it could be approved administratively afterwards, but I would like to have kind of
yeah? And
information
we
on
can.
what their current, when they currently turn off the illumination of the tall sign.
And they did provide some lighting specs, which I'm happy to forward over.
That would be great. And then if, I don't imagine that, matter of fact, I think we made the sign. I don't imagine that meeting those same specs is gonna be an issue whatsoever, so
Okay.
we can match that, I'm sure.
I know that this rendering is purely a rendering, but, and I don't know I have not noticed what's there now,
It's a
but
good rendering.
it is a good rendering. But it shows where the paint store sign on the standalone sign is just white. And I don't know if it's just white now or what's there now, but as their sign consultant, right? What ends up being a problem is like if that's just there's less light coming out of it when there's words on top of it, that's some of it.
Right.
Yeah, but just a blank, white background, sometimes that's over top, right?
Okay. Well,
And so I know, right, it's not, especially when when you're not trying to illuminate, any sign there, you can put something in there to block the light out.
Yeah,
So
so
it's just a
we're-
request,
Okay,
really.
well, I had only blocked it out because I knew that they were going away.
Yeah,
So we could, I'm sure they're not gonna wanna leave that in there. But we could certainly opaque out that bottom portion while it's,
well, it's not being
while
used,
whatever's
yeah,
happening
yeah.
is happening.
That would be great.
So it's just a request, really.
Yeah. Anything else? So for the conditions, the conditions are that the additional lighting specifications shall be submitted to be approved administratively.
And the paint store with the purple door sign shall be opaqued. We also, I believe, say that you should be removing a sign for a defunct business within, I think it's 60 days, Andrew?
Yep, I believe there is a clause on that. I didn't realize that the sign was still there. So to my understanding is we're not approving that adjacent business signage here. If and when they file for a sign permit application, they will still have to come back to CPDC for review and comment.
For the other tenant,
Yes.
right, I noticed that, okay.
Is that Andrew, I'm sorry, what I'm looking at on the screen, is that North Shore Banks? Or is that, you just typed that and I wasn't paying attention?
I just typed that.
Is that what North Shore Banks is it's not supposed to be lit after 11 p.m.?
That's not exactly what North Shore Banks said, but we've used similar in 40R signage applications, I believe. So it's something I want to go back to and make sure.
Andrew, do you have my email address for them, so you can send me the specs on?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, anything else?
do not see any raised hands.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I move to approve the certificate of appropriateness for Anton's Cleaners at 47 Harnden Street, as amended.
Second.
Okay, and we are hybrid, so I will do a roll call, starting with the online folks. Tony?
I might have to skip to unmute, sorry.
Sorry about that. I'll stay unmuted from now on. Yes.
Okay, Pam?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and as soon as I get that, we'll turn that right around and send it back to you.
Okay,
Good night, folks. Thanks for your time.
alrighty. Our next item is another sign permit application at 565 Main Street for Expressions Hair Studio. Hi. And she's raising her hand so she can be unmuted. You got her.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Dina Solwok, the owner of Expression Hair Studio.
Okay, would you like to, let me see, Andrew, you bringing it up, would you like to tell us about your application?
Yeah, do you want me to share the screen?
I think
I can
Andrew
share
might
the
be able to
screen.
pull it up and you can talk about
If
it.
that's okay.
Okay. Yes, okay, yes. Yes, we, like to, next page is, we'd like to have this, metal sign that, like a rustic metal sign where it says the name of the salon and when we open in 2021. And we also want to have some stickers, like a decal, the preview one, this one, on the two windows. That is going to be on like a sticker, black vinyl, like that, exactly. This sign will be 84 inches by 36. I don't know. Do you have any other questions?
Okay, questions from the committee?
Yes, I noticed that there was no sign off by the owner of the property. I believe that's required. Are you the owner of the property as well as the business?
No, actually, we did sign it.
No, you signed it, but the property owner did not.
This is you can go back. That sign is his. He signed it maybe in the wrong spot because this is not my sign.
Okay.
We also require such to issue the permit, so it will be captured on the
Okay.
permitting
We
system.
can probably add it, bring one with that signature.
Yes, you need that.
But what I'm missing is my signature because he's signed in the wrong spot.
Oh, okay, so,
Yeah, what is missing is my signature.
yeah, it's very difficult to recognize what that signature
Yes.
because it was with so much flourish, I assumed it was a woman who signed it.
No, with him. Mine's is simple there.
Okay.
Pam, you all set?
Yeah, I am on that. That was the one issue that I had that, it looked like the property owner had not signed.
Okay. I had a question about the vinyl applications. Are those internal or external?
Internal.
Okay, very good. We try to recommend internal because externals tend to wear quickly and
Yes, it's gonna be internal. That way also when the window guy go to do the job, it's easy for him to clean up the windows.
okay. And the colors on the main sign, the rustic red, that's what you're proposing?
Yeah,
Or is that- Okay,
it's not red, it's like the rustic metal, yeah, that's the color. The salon inside is very rustic look, they have like the wood and the metal to go with the decoration.
okay. I thought it might also lend towards your green hair,
Yes,
Green
correct,
salon.
like a earthy, yes, yeah.
yeah, okay. That's all I had.
Okay, other
Okay.
questions?
Are these two different businesses in the same location?
Yeah, the building is owned by Dennis, that is the owner of the business next to us, is the cool
Cooling Unlimited, I think.
Unlimited, yes, the Cooling Unlimited, yes. So he's is our landlord. So this blue onion that you see there is his.
Okay, got it. But I was seeing this with Expressions Hair Salon and then Green Salon. I didn't know if those were the same business or not.
Yeah, it's part of our logo. In our logo is if you see in our website, is Expression Hair Studio is a green salon since 2021. So it's part of. So because with our logo is a square, was not gonna, it was kind of too big to put it in the window. So we decided to just put divide it in two and two in the two windows, like a special hair studio. And it's very important for us to let the town know that we're a green salon. Or products that we use is not toxic, and that we partner with only companies that they have natural ingredients and they're careful with in the environment and
Okay,
accessible.
thank you.
All right, other questions from the commission?
I'm all set.
Me too, yep.
I think this looks
Yep.
nicer than at least what I'm seeing on Google Maps now. Any questions from the public?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. And we have a certificate of appropriateness. That looks pretty straightforward. If you're ready for a
Motion goes,
motion, you could.
Make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for Expressions Hair Studio at 565 Main Street.
Okay,
Second,
all right, thank you, Pam. And so we'll do roll call vote. Pam,
yes.
Tony,
Yes,
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Heather, yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And if we can, under other business, there's two A&R plans. We've generally in the past taken them early on in the meeting, and if we don't mind maybe taking those out of order, if you guys are amenable to that.
Sure, that's fine. So we have, where did my start to go?
IMCA.
We have. Why am I not seeing them? Oh, A&R, why don't we do in order that they are on the agenda under other items? Why don't we do first 36 Arthur B. Lord Drive?
Please, and I believe Kathleen Desmond is here with us on Zoom, and she is unmuted and ready to go if you don't mind, Kathleen.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Kathleen Desmond, Touchstone Law Offices in Reading. I'm here this evening on behalf of the Greater Boston YMCA, and before you is an approved not required plan. Andrew, do you need me to bring the plan up? I can share it if.
Sorry, I thought I was. Go.
So the petitioner seeks to subdivide the parcel known as numbered 36 Arthur B. Lord Drive, which is this entire parcel. It contains approximately 215,834 square feet of land. and it's being divided into parcel 1, which is this entire portion, and parcel 2. The parcel is presently constituted, is within the S15 zoning district, which requires a minimum lot area of 15,000 square feet, 12,000 square feet of upland area, and 100 linear feet of frontage on a public way. Lot 2, as shown as proposed, will have a lot area of 16,078 square feet, meeting the lot area requirement, and will have 140 feet of frontage on Forest Street, which is a public way. So both parcels will have the required frontage and lot area required under the zoning district. The conservation wetlands remaining on the 36 Arthur B. Lord Drive parcel. And that parcel will have 199,036 square feet, and the frontage on Arthur B. Lord Drive will remain constant. I could take any questions. if
Okay.
there are any.
Any questions from the commission?
No,
I have a question. There are several restrictions on this property. I assume the subdivision doesn't violate any of them?
I know that the YMCA has been working with the town manager on those restrictions that remain applicable. The intent at some point is to sell off lot 2, and the proceeds will be utilized for the YMCA business in Reading, and they're working with the town on those items.
I'm a little confused. I'm seeing the Board of Appeals, I'm seeing a conservation restriction, which I assume is from Conservation Commission, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see the town manager having that authority to make those changes. Is he leading the charge for the YMCA?
There aren't any wetlands on the parcel that's being spun off. Lot 2 is entirely upland, so there are no conservation restrictions on that parcel of land. With respect to the zoning, I don't recall that they had anything to do with this parcel that would be lot 2, but the applicant will comply with what the requirements are. I think I'm referring to Mr. Durazi, the deed restrictions, because there were deed restrictions that also have to be dealt with when and if the parcel sold off.
So the deed restrictions would continue to the second lot, but there's no deed restriction prohibiting the subdivision of the property.
No, the deed restrictions dealt with how the proceeds were to be utilized. I believe it's for the benefit solely of the YMCA and not for any other purpose. So, and whether those restrictions, those are in 2004, whether those restrictions have any validity at this point, is a question as well. But they're working through that with the town. In terms of the A&R plan, there aren't any conservation restrictions that would apply to lot 2 because it's total uplands.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there were no restrictions prohibiting the subdivision of the property.
No, and in fact, I think the restrictions deal with when and if, or if it was in fact subdivided, that there were some restrictions in play at that point, but not prohibiting.
Now, I know that much of that land is basically rock. Does that apply to lot 2 as well? If a building were to be put on there, would there be blasting required?
I'm not certain, and I don't think they're at that point. This is at the A&R level where they're just subdividing the lot. I don't know, and I haven't spoken to any engineers, and there isn't at this point any development plans in place that would indicate one way or the other. I think that's a little bit farther along in the process, and would be subject to the building department review.
Okay.
So
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
I have a related question. I see that the conservation, there's a label that says the conservation restriction line, if I'm reading this correctly, is the same as the new lot line. Am I reading that correctly? Is that just coincident?
I think that when this lot was intended to be subdivided, I know the property was flagged to determine where conservation line was, and you know, I think there was an intent to, if it complied with the area requirements, to keep the conservation portion of the lot as part of the 36 Arthur B. Lord Drive, and utilize only the uplands for lot 2.
But if you have
I know that,
if you have a conservation restriction on a piece of property, it's pretty well defined where that is. It doesn't just move based on the wetlands, because the conservation restriction doesn't have to be based on wetlands. It's based on
On a land area.
right, and it
I know that,
has
Okay.
tax advantages and but there's a lot of restrictions on what you can and can't do once you put it in a conservation restriction.
I know that this was flagged prior to, by conservation prior to the survey being performed to make sure that lot 2 was free of any of the conservation restrictions or requirements. Because it took some time to flag before the survey could be performed.
Okay, other questions?
No.
In fact, if you look at the plan, just to clarify, you'll see that the wetlands were flagged by North Environmental Services on January 31st, 2023, and that's at the top of the plan.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the public? No? Okay. And sorry, I'm challenged in my file management tonight. So we are approving but we're not approving.
So it would be an endorsement.
Thank you, this
Um,
always trips me up.
Yep, it would be an endorsement. There was a typo in the memo. I corrected that, Forest Street. But that's really just a general summary, and then the certificate is what we post with the clerk. But if you were to vote to endorse tonight, there are Mylar plans to sign as well.
Andrew, how many signatures do you need on the Mylars?
3, at least.
If you need an extra signature, I can come up at the end of the meeting.
Okay, it usually does help to try to get everybody that votes, but I can follow up tomorrow if we get to that.
All right,
Come by tomorrow as well.
so I guess we just need a
Make
motion to endorse this.
To endorse the subdivision approval not required plan for 36 Arthur B. Lord Drive.
And I'll second.
Okay, and we'll do a roll call vote. Pam,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Heather, yes.
Thank you guys.
Okay, so that's
that
one of
one.
the A&Rs.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you very much. And the other is for 5 and 17 Lila Lane. Do we have somebody to present on this?
We do. I have to ask Mr. Sullivan to unmute. So Jack
All right,
Sullivan.
I'm on it. I'm on, Andrew.
Perfect.
Great.
Pull the plan up.
Yep. Okay, for the record, my name's Jack Sullivan. I'm owner of the Sullivan Engineering Group. And I'm here before you tonight for an A&R plan for between number 5 and number 17 Lila Lane. The two landowners are looking to do an equal land swap of 811 square feet. The existing lot, it's just a funky lot division that exists, and they want to square it up better between the two properties. This is in the S20 zoning district. You need 20,000 square feet of land area, 120 feet minimum lot frontage. Number 5 Lila Lane, the one on the right, it'll be left with 188.63 feet of lot frontage, and it'll still have over 20,000 square feet of land area. And number 17 Lila will have 193.33 feet of lot frontage with 20,001 square feet of land area. There's no wetlands for the property, so it's really just a simple land swap. We meet all the zoning requirements, and we maintain the minimum side setbacks from the existing dwellings to the new lot line. I'll turn it over to the board to see if you have any questions.
Okay, questions from the commission?
Yes, does this need, the land swap need to be deeded, and has the deed have both deeds been registered?
It will require a deed from both owners. The deed has not been prepared. We're waiting on this plan to be endorsed, and then the deed will be written up referencing this plan, and they'll be recorded together.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
2 quick ones. I assume the shed is far enough from the new lot line since it's extremely close to the old lot line to start with.
Correct, yeah, but shed needs a 5-foot setback, so yeah, now the new lot line gets further away than the existing lot line.
Okay. I assume 5 Lila Lane is not on the portion of Sanborn Lane that is actually private, correct?
Correct.
Okay, my last question is, this has no impact to the weirdly shaped lots around it. I thought, looking at the town website, that there was like a little sliver from one of the outside lots coming in and touching.
Yep, I was actually, yep, that's behind these properties, and I just prepared a plan for the town, and I dealt with the owner at number 67 Sanborn, and that little sliver now belongs to number 67 Sanborn. That's been all worked out, but those are separate properties.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission?
No, I'm all set.
Okay, any questions from the public? Okay, and so we have another thing to endorse, certificate to endorse, yes.
Make a motion to endorse the subdivision approval not required plan for 5 and 17 Lila Lane.
Second?
Second.
Okay, and we'll do a roll call vote, starting with Tony,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Heather, yes.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Moving right
Yep,
along.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so next up on the agenda is a continued public hearing for 45 Beacon Street, correct? How are we doing all this and we're behind?
So that application was continued. We did not get any changed revised plans based on your previous comments, and the applicant could not attend tonight, so they have requested that that application be continued to your June 12th hearing, and subsequently I would note the motion should also look to extend the 45-day window to act on that hearing to June 15th for the time being.
Okay. Do you have a time that you want us to do this?
We can do 7:30. That's first. It's an open slot, so
Make a motion to accept the request of the applicant to continue the hearing to, is it Monday, June 12th?
Yep.
At 7:30, and extend the
45-day period.
the
to
45-day period to June 15th.
15th, yep, please.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Okay,
Discussion?
discussion.
It just seems to me that if there's a 45-day period and we've got an extension, that 45-day period should also extend equivalently. Adding 3 extra days after the decision, I don't know if that's to the board's benefit. So I assume if the applicant put in a request month 1, and within 30 days we are having a hearing, that would mean we'd have an additional 15 days to finalize the decision. If they then ask for a 30-day extension to that, it shouldn't be a case that we're extending the 45 to an extra 3 days. It should be 15 days beyond. I just don't want to get behind the 8 ball as we go forward. I'm okay with this one, but I'm just thinking about in the future.
Was the 45 days going to run out in just a few days?
Yeah, so it's from the time of the submittal of the application, so
Yeah.
we just wanted to get ahead of it and cross the Ts, dot the Is.
Did you hear that, Tony? So the original 45 days was going to be 3 days from now,
Probably
on the
so, yeah.
18th? So we're staying within that time.
Okay.
I hear you,
what you're
and I
saying.
I
totally
hear what
agree.
you're saying too. They're typically from the close of hearing sometimes, but in this case, it's from the date of application, so we just
Okay.
want to extend that and cover our bases.
All right.
And it's action, it's not necessarily approval, it's action.
Yeah, and we're confident as staff that we could, if there were to be a vote in June, we could turn around a decision by that end of week.
All right.
That's a good question, thank you. Any other discussion?
Nope.
Okay, we'll take a vote then. Pam,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Heather, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And next up is the minor site plan review at 36 Arthur B. Lord Drive. More why?
Yes. If we could, if someone wouldn't mind reading the notice into the record, I can share it on screen as well.
You gotta make me do it, aren't you?
No, I'll do it. I'm losing my. Oh, do we not have it?
I don't know if we have the
Yeah.
notice.
Might
Oh,
not
it's
have
up
been
there.
in the
Okay.
drive.
Oh, I can't
Yeah.
read that.
I can read it.
Take a break, but I left my.
I see it, I can do it.
Oh, yeah.
Notice is hereby given that under sections 4.3 and 4.6 of the Reading zoning bylaw, the Community Planning and Development Commission, CPDC, will hold a public hearing on Monday, May 15, 2023 at 7:45 p.m. in the Select Board Room at Town Hall, 16 Wall Street, Reading, Mass, and through the remote and online measures below to hear the minor site plan review application submitted by BSC Group Inc. on behalf of the Greater Boston YMCA located at 36 Arthur B. Lord Drive, Assessors Map 33, Lot 92. The applicant is proposing site improvements including replacing the concrete splash pad, play area, and several parking spaces with new artificial lawn play area. A copy of the application and accompanying plans are available to the public at Town Hall by appointment and on the town website the Thursday prior to the hearing.
Thank you.
Tony, how could I forget how efficient you are at that? Thank you. Okay, and do we have somebody to present on this?
We do. I believe Mr. Joe White is here on the Zoom. Joe, I can share the most recent plan you submitted today. I imagine that's where you want to start.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, so as Andrew mentioned, my name is Joe White. I'm a civil engineer with BSC Group, and as Tony read extremely fast there, we are representing the YMCA on this project. So what they're looking to do out here, I don't know how familiar any of you are with the YMCA. in the splash pad they have out back, but they have a concrete splash pad, and then a synthetic rubber play area, if you will, that they use, and that's fenced in, and it's also surrounded by a guardrail and some vertical granite curb there, and they want to take that and basically change it to a synthetic lawn play area. So they'd be removing the concrete, removing the hard rubber material, and that whole area would become a synthetic lawn. And they want to use this Lawn product, which I haven't really worked with before, but looking into it, it's a pretty interesting product. It's pretty environmentally friendly. They use a organic sand infill that it's not your typical black chrome rubber material. And as part of this, they'd be redesigning a little bit of the parking lot, removing several spaces based on this plan here. It'd be total removal of 5 spaces and then rearranging 2. So we initially were going to keep those spaces kind of up where Andrew's cursor just was there. And based on some comments by the commission, we looked at it again. We weren't really proposing to make it worse, but it's definitely tight in there. And we think we can make it a little bit better if we eliminate those and replace the 3 with just a single parallel space there. And we did run some turning movements through there with our software, which I can share if you want to look at them, but it's able to accommodate a full-size passenger vehicle, fairly well. And we're also proposing to add some kind of striping there along the fence and guardrail and a couple of bollards at the corner just to kind of add an extra layer of protection there. So yeah, I'll be happy to answer any questions if there's any questions at this time. And I also, have some pictures and things like that if anyone would like to see them.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask for questions from the commission, and I will start by saying that the tweaks that you've made are quite a bit improved from the last version that I saw while we were attempting to do this through administrative approval. Other questions?
I had a question on dumpster access. Is that going to be an issue?
We're not changing dumpster access at all from kind of how it was in its existing condition. There's enough room out there now for a truck, to come in and unload that dumpster and back out. So it should be the same there. We're not changing any sort of access coming in straight to that. So there's actually the door going into the building is about, can you zoom in at all, Andrew?
Yep.
So right at that corner where the proposed fence meets the building,
Mm-hmm.
the door is about 2 feet in towards the building there that goes into the YMCA. So we're really just kind of adding a fence in between that existing building corner and the dumpster there.
And is the playgrass area generally just for there's not going to be any impact sports or anything? It's just kids playing on ball, like kickball and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's my understanding. It's not a very big area, it's not like a soccer field or anything like that. My understanding is that they're going to use it mostly for their, after school and kids programs, rather than having the concrete splash pad. And I think the other material was like a harder synthetic rubber. It's supposed to be a bit softer.
And what's the drainage for that area?
Yeah, so right now it's all impervious. The hard rubber may let a little bit of water through, but this turf material is it's an improvement in terms of impervious area, and under it is a crushed stone and granular material. So water should go right through it. There's no extra drains that we're proposing, as we're really reducing the impervious area on site here.
And have you done any kind of infiltration test on the soil underneath? In other words, so we don't want it to be wet all the time. It doesn't drain.
Yeah, we have not yet, just because that would require kind of ripping up what they have there.
Yeah.
We wanted to get this permitted. but you know, once we excavate out what's there, we'd obviously be able to see what's underneath and look at if we need any sort of extra drainage or anything like that.
Any other questions?
All right, I'll ask a few.
I have a couple more, but you guys should ask first.
Okay, no problem. What's the emergency egress? Obviously, you don't want people entering the play area, but you do want people to be able to get out in emergency.
Yeah, so there's one door in and out of the building, and then we are showing another door kind of over by the bollards, like an exit from the gated area directly to the parking lot. I'm not sure, I'd have to zoom in a little bit, but it's in the striped area, kind of at the corner there. We're showing a proposed fence gate there.
And that would be alarmed?
I would have to check with the YMCA on that,
Okay.
which I can do that.
Also, you mentioned the two bollards.
Correct.
And I see that we've got an existing wood guardrail. Is there anything that can be done to better protect from the, what sounds like every week, accidental running into a building by somebody in a car?
I mean, we have a vertical granite curb, a wood guardrail, which is all they have out there at this point, and then we're showing those bollards. I'm not really sure what else we could put there as far as protection. I think the parallel space will help just because people won't have to back up kind of towards that fenced area. The only spot that really will is that last spot before you get to the parallel spaces there. But I'm not really sure what else we could put there to make it any better.
I'm just looking at those, I want to say 9 spaces that basically people will be driving straight into right up to the fence.
Yeah, no, you're talking about the ones, can we just get that plan back for a second
Yep,
there?
sorry, my Adobe crashed.
Are you talking about the existing spaces there that are currently along the fence?
Yes.
Those do exist now, heading right into the
Yeah,
splash
those
pad.
aren't proposed, those are, and I understand, you know, obviously if we could make them safer, but we're basically proposing to meet the existing fence, guardrail, and curb kind of right at that last space before we start turning the corner there. There's actually a label that says meet existing VGC. So everything kind of planned south from there is existing fence and guardrail. And we were proposing to tie into that and go around the corner with it. So essentially those 9 spaces you're looking at, we wouldn't be changing anything from the existing condition.
The only difference is that this play area could be open in the winter, I assume, as opposed to a splash pad, where it's a little more slippery and a car could slide in.
Yeah, that is I guess that is a concern. I don't know how much the YMCA would be using it in the winter when it's freezing conditions, but I really don't know what else we could put there aside from, I mean, I guess we could look at adding bollards, but that would cut into the parking spaces and kind of further narrow that drive aisle, which is already, you know, relatively tight, but.
I think when I look at this, Tony, I think that the speed of cars coming around here and trying to navigate into those spaces don't lead themselves into sort of like, even if someone were to gun it straight into that space, they wouldn't have much headroom to be able, like, you know, you wouldn't have gone very far before, you know, to accelerate into that.
Okay.
And right, at least it used to be like there were never more than, you know, there's always a car parked back there, so it's not even like you could come in and sideswipe it just because you'd hit a car.
Yeah, when my perspective, and I went over there, I'm actually pretty familiar with that back corner. I used to pick my son up there every night after swimming. And the wooden guardrail is like a hefty one, and when I was looking at it, it's interesting, Tony, because I was thinking, oh, those 9 spaces kind of provide a buffer. I was more concerned about people speeding around and having those parked cars kind of provide a buffer. My lingering concern, but I don't know if there's more to do about it other than maybe extend bollards all across. My lingering concern is just about the portion of fence that's now opposite the parallel parking space, where there you have vehicles traveling right up against the fence. But I think the bollards will help, and not having cars backing right up into that area where there's not enough room to back up there. I think that works much better.
In
Okay.
those bollards, right, I don't think I saw any details on those, right? The typical steel, concrete filled steel tube.
That was one of my questions, what's the material of those?
Yeah, that's what we were envisioning there. Kind of your typical parking lot steel, concrete case steel bollards there. That was, what we're envisioning. Kind of what along the lines of what you were just saying. I think that the narrow drive aisle does kind of lend itself to, not speeding around those corners. Not that that's necessarily a design element, but I've driven through there a few times now, and it is pretty tight in its existing condition. And after talking with the folks at the YMCA, they basically told me that those kind of 3 spaces where the parallel space is now, at most there's a compact car parked there. One of the folks I was talking to actually owned a truck, and he said he could never even park in that spot in its existing condition with that. So I think the parallel space is an improvement over what's there now.
I attempted to park there once. And that relates to my next, this is more of a suggestion, not necessarily a requirement, but where the parallel parking space is, and then there's the diagonal paint, and then the parking space that's to the left of there, as long as people are painting, if we're looking at it, that left-hand line is too short for how far you can actually park, right? Because you're not parking all the way back. I promise you that if you park there at night and you're not looking, you will run into the rock back there. And so it could be very helpful for parkers to extend that line so that it's actually where the parking space ends. I personally have rammed my car back there.
So just to clarify, you're looking at the one space to the left of the proposed.
Yeah, do you know what I'm saying? Where it's
Okay.
like, it's not, it's painted to be as
Yeah,
though
it's
you
at
can park
an
way
angle,
back
but in
there.
reality, your passenger side front tire can only get you so far into that space. It's kind of what you're saying, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
So they could put a concrete bumper or something.
Yeah, or somehow just stripe it and make it obvious so that in the dark, it's an easy spot to use. I do have another question. It doesn't, I know it doesn't impact the minimum spaces that are available, but the 8 spaces that are at the front of the building, where right now the words are minimum building setback line, those spaces are not in use to the public. They're being used, I think, as a play area, outdoor play area for the Y. Is that intended to stay that way? I'm just thinking when we're framing up the decision, we should frame accurately how many spaces are actually available for use.
Yeah, so I don't have a specific answer on those spaces. I did check in with the folks over at the Y on Friday, and unfortunately they were off today, the 2 that I was working with there. And I was told that even with losing these 5 spaces, they'd still be end up gaining total spaces. So I'm thinking that those might be going back to being parking spaces over there, but I can confirm that with you, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I just think somehow in the decision, we should reflect how many spaces are actually in use.
Yeah, I can definitely provide a final count. I'm just a little bit unclear on exactly where the spaces that they're adding were coming from.
Yeah, I don't.
But I can provide the number.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I don't see spaces being
Yep.
added. other questions from the commission?
No, none from me.
Okay, any questions from the public? Okay,
I'm not seeing any hands.
we have a decision.
So we did draft a decision for a minor site plan review for review. We summarized the application here at the top and their exact proposal, and I can even add the reduction in spaces language. It's 5. We summarized the applicability and why this minor site plan was triggered, which was a change to the layout or location of 2 or more parking spaces. We summarized the existing zoning of the site, which is located in the S15 residential zoning district. And we summarized the existing conditions of where the proposed area is to be modified. The overview of the proposal is to replace that existing concrete splash pad and synthetic play area, and 1,100 square feet of paved parking lot with a larger fenced synthetic lawn area for use by the YMCA programs and members. We'll remove the tanks and gravel area that service the splash pad, and the proposed improvements result in no increase to the impervious area of the lot, and it results in a total net loss of 5 parking spaces and the relocation or reconfiguration of 2 spaces, which were the one abutting the play area and the parallel space. So we summarized the parking lot as it exists today, and the zoning requirements. So zoning requires 88 parking spaces. The site currently maintains 123. With a net loss of 5 spaces, you have a resulting total parking count of 118 parking spaces. However, we did note an additional 8 parking spaces are currently utilized as that play area and is to remain, limiting total on-site parking spaces to 110 spaces. I'd like to confirm that with Joe tomorrow before finalizing this, just to make sure that's the YMCA's intent. We noted how the drive aisle will change a bit, so the 18 width drive aisles are maintained. However, given the striping, there are points that it reaches 14 feet wide. It is a one-way flow and exit to that side of the drive, so should be okay. All parking spaces are to be 9 by 18 as well, and we noted the bollards and striping. So vertical granite curbing is to be used. Screening of a fence and wooden guardrail will be extended around the perimeter of the new play area. And then to note, the application, a portion of the proposed changes was located in the 100-foot buffer. It has been reviewed and approved by the Conservation Department and Commission. So we had a few general conditions. There's no trigger of a building permit in this case. However, we still want to maintain that, or occupancy permit, but we still want to maintain the ability to inspect the site and take a look after the fact to make sure that it is built to what is approved. So if I'm missing anything or you would like to add anything, happy to.
Andrew, just one question on the parking space size. We had 8 by 22 for parallel spaces. I think that's what it says in your zoning bylaws. Just wanted to confirm that.
I will confirm that.
Just for the parallel space.
Check that now. Subdivision needs that's all. I'm not reading that requirement, but I will look further into that, just to be sure.
Okay.
And did I hear you correctly say that you'll be taking concrete before you're laying down what is basically AstroTurf?
Yeah, so the synthetic lawn it won't be going on top of the concrete. That comes out and it gets filled in with gravel and, other kind of free draining material there. And then the synthetic lawn goes over that.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay. It's in the Gateway Smart Growth District. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, are you looking for the parallel parking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That applies to a different portion of the bylaw that this application does not require, but if that's the standard that you would, and if the space fits at that size, I don't see why we would change it or reduce it.
Works for me. Okay. Anything else? Or are we ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minor site plan for the Burbank YMCA site improvements at 36 Arthur B. Lord Drive.
Second,
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Tony?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Mark?
yes.
John?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. Thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Joe. We'll follow up this week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay. Next up, we have public hearing opening, I believe, on a major modification of subdivision application for the Grandview Road extension. Yes?
Yes. Not sure if the legal ad made its way into the drive, but if we can read that into record, that would be much appreciated.
Tony, when it comes up, would you like to read that into the record?
All right. Notice of public hearing. Notice is hereby given that pursuant to MGL Chapter 41, Section 81T and Section 6.2.5 of the Reading Subdivision Regulations, Community Planning and Development Commission, CPDC, will hold a public hearing on Monday, May 15th at 8 p.m. in the Select Board Room at Town Hall, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass., and through the remote and online measures below to consider the major modification application to a previously approved 4-lot definitive subdivision submitted by Michael Solomon for land located at 4 Cold Spring Road, Assessors Map 27, Lot 404 in Reading, Massachusetts. A copy of the major modification application and accompanying plans are available to the public at Town Hall and on the town website Thursday prior to the hearing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We have somebody to present on this.
Yes, Mr. Giovanni Federa, the project engineer, is on the Zoom call. Gio, I can pull up the plans, but happy for you to start with the summary and go from there.
Sure thing. Yeah, if you want me to pull up the plans, I can also do that as well.
Yeah, that might be better in this case. Let me make you a co-host and you should have.
Okay, sure thing. So just for the record, Giovanni Federa, I'm the owner of Federa Engineering, project engineer of the project. We went through this approval process a few years back on the Grandview Road extension. It's a 4-lot subdivision. Same subdivision is now being applied in this application. We just, as construction started, getting looked at, right? We were looking at the plans and we were going through the plans and we said, maybe we could modify a few things of the site plan, and most of it was for the drainage system. And so I'll share the screen right now. So previously we had a subsurface infiltration system that was located in the same area as the newly proposed detention pond. So it's the same project, the same geometric layout. The only difference is now that lot 2, which is this lot, is proposed to not be constructed as part of this project, but will be potentially developed in the future. So this project is just going to construct the 2 lots in the back, lots 3 and 4. And part of the changes was really just regrading of the site and, like I said, the stormwater design. Regrading the site, the cul-de-sac was lowered about by 3 feet or so. And the way that all the grading happens and where it is designed is now that the roadway has the lowest point at the ends of the cul-de-sac, and so all the stormwater will just flow right at the end of the cul-de-sac right there and catch into this double catch basin. The roadway is about 250 feet, I think it's about 260 feet in length. And I know the Reading bylaws, they require that catch basins be separated by no greater than 300 feet. So having a double catch basin right here at the end would be satisfactory for all the runoff from this roadway. And additionally, the houses and the driveways, roof runoff from lots 3 right here would be entered into this open basin, and the roof runoff from lot 4 would be directed out through a flared end section right here, and ultimately be directed overland into catch basin right there. And so we determined that removing the subsurface infiltration basin, it was easier for maintenance of the system, so that when you have the open basin, you can really take care of it. It's a lot cleaner with maintenance, and you don't need to go through inspection ports and use vacuums and to try to maintain and clean it. So we figured it was a better design, and to remove a lot of the infrastructure, because previously we had the catch basin right here in this point right there, the catch basin right here. So I think those were the 2 catch basins, and then had a conveyance of pipes going through a manhole and a second manhole, and then to the underground subsurface infiltration system. Whereas we just have one pipe right here pretty much. We have the catch basin goes to a manhole with the sump, and that sump removes the TSS removal rates, and then it gets directed to stormwater basin, right? And so the new waivers that we are requesting are just for the pipe cover. So the bylaws state that pipe cover needs to be 4 feet within the roadway of a drain pipe and 3 feet within a drainage easement. And so we have, I think it's about 2.5 feet of cover or so. And the reason why we have that pipe raised a little bit higher is so that once this detention basin is filling up during say a 100-year storm, for example, right? That the water level in this basin will be at the highest point, and still the outlet of this pipe right here will be above the water level in the basin, so that there's a clean flow of water going into the basin without the pipes being submerged in water, right? And that's why we designed the pipe to be a little bit more shallow, and that's why we requested that waiver. I know the town engineering department, they came back with a memo that they were not in support of it, but it's arguably an accepted design, because it's really not going through a lot of roadway. It's really just going right at the end of the cul-de-sac and shooting right out to the detention basin. So I can see why, not being in support of the pipes being shallow, if it was going through, a series of roadways and whatnot, but this kind of just going right at the end of the cul-de-sac and shooting right out to open basin. It's arguably a pretty good design and typically accepted. You know, however, if the commission, you know, did not like that waiver, there is the opportunity and the flexibility to lower that pipe a little bit as well. You know, and that would still be accepted design. The only reason why, like I said, I wanted to keep that pipe above the highest elevation point of the water within this basin, just to make sure that there's a clean flow of, you know, I just didn't want to submerge it, but if we had to, we can. So there is that flexibility. Other than that, if the future Lot 2 gets developed, it would need its own dry well basin, so that would be for future, and that is outlined on the plan. So, but as for the new houses, they are being directed into the open basin, and so all the impervious areas are being directed to this basin. Once this basin starts to overflow in a larger storm, it would get directed to this pipe right here. It's an overflow outlet structure, and it would get directed to this riprap flow control and towards the wetlands. So it's a bit, and overall, it's the same subdivision, just changes are with site grading in the stormwater system, and I think that's the summary that I have for everyone. So if you're open to discuss and answer any questions at this time, thank you.
Okay, comments, questions from the commission?
I got a bunch.
I thought you might, thank you.
My first question is, why are you lowering the elevation of the cul-de-sac? I think you said 3 feet. If you didn't do that, you wouldn't have a cover problem on the pipe.
We did that just to try to match somewhat of the existing conditions.
Right. But now your driveways are steeper. You've got more grade coming down. You've got a steeper grade. Excuse me, can I finish? You've got a steeper grade coming down the road, so now you're going to have higher velocity on the runoff. You know, again, it makes the building, the driveways up to the buildings are steeper. There's a lot more grading on the sides. So I'm not quite sure what the purpose of that, other than not bringing in some fill.
So the grading of the roadway, especially in this neck of the roadway, it's pretty much the same thing as what it previously was. You can see right here, the contours are spaced out the same distance between this is the endorsed plane, and so contours spaced out same distance over here. So the grading is the same.
Well, if you're dropping it, and I don't have the exact numbers, but if you're dropping the back of the cul-de-sac, then the grading's not going to be the same.
Well, the thing about the grading is that the drop right here is the same. The design over here is that the end of the cul-de-sac was raised higher, so that the low points were really at this point and at this point. Whereas now the low point is all the way at the end. So the steepest point of the roadway, the pitch, it's the same as what it previously was. The only thing is now, because this is not a high point, right? It's a low point, and so it just continued down.
Right, but I guess my question is, it was designed a certain way for a certain reason, and now you're coming back and saying, we want to change it, and I'm not really sure why you want to change it. There's no purpose other than to eliminate some infrastructure and some fill. And I don't believe that the drainage, and I'm not looking at this, I'm not doing the engineering review of it, the town engineer is, but just from knowing how stormwater runs down a road, instead of now having 2 inlets, 3/4 of the way down the road, you've got one. So now you're gonna have a lot of sheet drainage running down a further distance, and it's just not going to be as efficient.
Well, I would disagree because it's the same volume of water is actually going to the same thing, so the catch basins and the same discharge point.
No, because
if this is the high point right here.
you,
That high point is the same area as compared to the neck right here. It's the same area of runoff, you know. So, and they're both going to the same discharge point. It's actually a bit better designed because it's a straight flow home to the end of the cul-de-sac with a double catch basin. So it's and like I said, the subdivision rules and regs, they don't allow catch basins to be spaced out over 300 feet apart. And this roadway is about 260 feet in length, so it's still within that 300 feet. And therefore the catch basin should be sufficient for the roadway.
I personally disagree with that, with your conclusions on that, because two catch basins is more efficient than one. I think it's lot number 4, you've pushed that back to having a retaining wall, which I think at one point is 6 feet high, and you're showing it right up against the lot line. So there's going to be a significant amount of tree clearing that I don't think you're going to be able to build that on that property without doing clearing on the and encroaching on the abutting property.
Trees aren't sure.
Right along there, yes.
Well, I mean, I'm sure that there can be an agreement with this landowner, considering that landowner is the applicant's father. I'm sure that there can be some sort of
Well, but we can't take that into consideration. We're looking at, you're building this project, you're going to put a retaining wall in, and you could be damaging the abutting property. So as responsible members of the planning commission, we have to look at what could be the potential impacts. And I know if I lived in that house and someone came out and started putting a retaining wall right up against my property line and cutting trees, I'd be pretty upset. And I think there are regulations on how close to the property line you can do clearing. I noticed you had in the original design you had dry wells for the roof drainage, and those are eliminated?
That is correct. Dry wells for lots 2 and 3.
I thought it was for 3 and 4. Oh, you're right. One of them's right in front. So why are you eliminating those?
Well, we figured if we're gonna have an open basin, it's sized to satisfy the runoff. In addition to having the roof runoff right here, you know, just having that runoff go right to that open basin.
Well, you have the same. You'll have the same volume. You just it's just going in faster.
Same. What is it?
Well, my understanding, I think those weren't they just detention tanks in the original?
Or right here, these drywall systems, they were really just for the house to be fully infiltrated with the runoff, and that there wouldn't be any runoff from the roof.
Right. So now that increases the size of your basin.
Yeah, and the good thing about having an open basin is that it's a 100. There's no voids. Well, it's a 100% void. You know, it's an open basin. Whereas an underground system, you have a 40% void ratio with just the stone alone, and you know, so it's an open basin. You have more volume for less footprint, a smaller footprint.
The other thing, and we'll talk about the engineer's comments, but on lot 4, looking at the elevation of the, and I'm not sure on all the existing grading, because it's a little hard for me to see on the small plans, but it looks like the north wall of that building is going to be pretty high. Because you basically have an exposed basement and then a first floor and then a second floor and then a roof. And I think between the bottom of the garage slab and the first floor is over 10 feet.
Which lot?
Lot 4.
Okay.
And so, we do have a height restriction for this zoning.
The basement and the first floor elevation would be separated by 9 feet.
Right, but then put 2 floors on top of that is that, what's the grade outside the garage? Is the garage underground? Doesn't look like it.
No, it's not. It's not
Right, so you've got the garage wall, and then you've got the first floor wall, and then you've got the second floor wall, and then you have the peak of the roof. That adds up to more than 35 feet to me, unless it's a flat roof.
Well, that'll get discussed before building permit. I'm sure the architectural plans will really define that.
So the engineers, I don't know if you want to run through those, Andrew, but the engineer had a lot of the same comments that I had also, and I'm sure they looked at it in a lot more detail than I did.
Yeah, the first question, Gio, if you know the answer. The first comment is previous plans for the southernmost home included roof drainage. We might have just gone over this actually. There are concerns that the adjacent property will now receive stormwater flows given the grades. The stormwater report indicates all impervious area will be captured. Does that include the hardscapes on the lots? The previous plan captured impervious areas on individual lots.
I could use a recap of the response to that.
Were there responses to these? I haven't seen
No,
them.
I'm just asking for a verbal response. I mean, I think it was maybe partially addressed in explaining where the flow was gonna go, but I could use a response specific to that comment.
So this, I know, I read this comment a few times, and I don't see that there would be any runoff going to adjacent properties. And the roof drainage has the infiltration system. It's the same situation. I mean, we have the roof drainage of block 4 is still going to be tied to the open basin. It's just going to be exiting it out through a flared end section and will flow overland.
Can I ask a question about that? And I'm sorry if
Sure.
it's something I should know. Is that like a pipe that is where for that lot, how is it exiting out to the street?
So it is a pipe, and it catches all the roof downspouts, and then it just directs over here into a flared end section, so it daylights. And then usually some riprap right at the end, and then any runoff will just flow overland after being daylighted.
What happens if that gets clogged up?
Or what'll happen is the sidewalk will get all iced up.
Yeah.
That should be a pipe to the catch basin if you're gonna do it that way.
To direct it similarly the way that we had previously had it. I mean, that we do have that option to direct it. It just connects to that manhole. We can do that as well. That's a concern.
Well, yeah, I mean,
I would be concerned about that, yeah.
the way that I interpret the engineer's memo is right, that comes down, first of all, like, is that even, can you discharge water the way that it's hard to read these plans because the
So
line
much
weights are
going on.
all the same. But, right, you're discharging water onto your neighbor's property, right? Or is that little corner someone else's, is that,
That is not the Reese property, correct, but there is an easement to
Okay.
access utility and access your utility easement.
and then is that is the sidewalk, again, everything's the same line weight. Is the sidewalk go from that property around, right? It's grayed out there.
Yeah.
And so the way that I read this grading is that the water would hit the sidewalk and then run down the sidewalk, right? Because it is graded that way. And then
Yes.
down, actually, is that sidewalk slope down to his house?
No, yeah, is that sloped?
Can't tell, right? Maybe it's even, but
It would flow kind of like this,
yeah.
like down there, like that, and then to.
No, but it wouldn't run off the pavement, off the cement onto it'd run down,
Yeah, it's
it
not
would
gonna go
run
like a
down the
waterfall.
sidewalk
Yeah.
Right.
along the,
To the driveway
To the
and then down
driveway.
the driveway
yeah,
and then down through the curb and big ice mess.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I've seen this done on subdivisions before.
Yeah.
After the fact, they put in a perimeter drain or something and it just makes a huge mess of the street.
we kind of did that to our own property.
And you don't know it until the first winter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And every time there's
And-
melt, it happens, yeah.
And that is easily fixable, that's something that we can adjust.
Okay, I guess I'm wondering, there are a lot of points here on the engineer's memo. I'm torn between going through them one by one or just like asking
Ask
for
questions.
responses at a follow-up
I think that's
meeting.
more appropriate.
Unless there,
Yeah.
yeah, cause there are so many.
I'll say, I read through that memo and looked, I didn't go as thorough as a job because I sort of felt like there's gotta be a lot of changes. I didn't see anything on that the engineer's memo that I necessarily disagreed with.
Right.
So before we spend all of our time on it, I guess I'd really like either those responses done, addressed or at least comments,
Responded to
responded
somehow.
to so that we can then spend our time, more appropriately on a more finished product.
One thing I didn't see in the engineer's comments was a review of the stormwater calculations. And I don't know whether they did that. You've got the original stormwater report, now you've got a new stormwater report. And, you can really make these stormwater reports do whatever you want them to do. And so I'd like to, just have the engineering department conclude what what was in the report was using the same assumptions as the original design.
Yes, I believe we had commented both in a meeting and I think on the memo of TSS removals and phosphorus reduction calculations are needed and we'd like to see some sort of treatment for Bay for the design to ensure that those assumptions are still being met.
Okay. I have a general question, and again, others may know. So this would be an open detention basin is what it would be?
Correct.
So it is in close proximity to a house where there might presumably be children and animals and like pets. Are those then normally fenced? Is the requirement similar to like if you have a pool in your backyard, or how is safety addressed with those?
There's no specific requirements to fencing or securing them. It's what makes them, a bit difficult to plan for and conversate.
Yeah.
Because you could provide fencing, but there's no specific requirement, there's no setback requirements of them like there is a swimming pool. So it makes it a bit difficult.
Yeah, to me it looks awfully close to the house.
And, you know, one of the issues with that is they're not very easy to get in and maintain.
Right.
So you've got these slopes next to the house. How do they access that? How do they, you know, they're gonna go in with a small tractor or a brush hog or something like that. What I've seen, and I assume that this is gonna be maintained by an HOA. And so the HOA doesn't go in there until you,
Till there's a problem.
well, or you force them to do it, but by then you've got saplings growing in there, and I don't see and I walk around my neighborhood a lot and I see these things. There's always a lot of trash in them. Some of them are clean. Some of if they're next to a house, someone mows them and plants plantings on them and things like that. You can't plant trees in those because it's a, you know, the walls have to be, or the sides of it have to be stable, and a tree could fall over and disrupt it. But there's always trash blowing in there and weeds growing in there and dead animals. And, but there's one across the street from the one that's like that. That's the person mows it and looks really nice.
Yeah.
So it really depends on who's maintaining it and how much it's part of the yard. But the original design is much more acceptable from a homeowner's point of view because now the land is usable.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to cut off discussion. Are there any other points? But overall, I just think I would like to see response, either these points addressed or otherwise responded to.
I guess I have a question. It's not in the engineer's memo, and I guess think it may have to be addressed as well. So, right, in this plan that, I don't know which number it is, but right, there's the one parcel that there's not gonna be a house designed or planned, right, and built on that by this property owner yet. It's still part of the subdivision, and it's still the infrastructure for the subdivision, if there, you know, still needs to be designed in order to address something on that parcel. And so to the degree that, like the adjacent parcel where there is a building plan, right, shows some accommodation for stormwater, like there, you know, the subdivision still needs to plan for, you know, some future development on that. Do I have that wrong? I mean,
No, that's
you
a
know,
very good point.
we still need to plan for that. You know, the applicant may not build it, it may not even, you know, plan to build it or what, that's fine. We
But
can't
is-
let the subdivision go without the infrastructure being designed in a way that accommodates the planned future use of that
Agreed.
property.
Because the plan doesn't show any sewer water stubs, any
Yeah.
curb cut.
And it doesn't, do the stormwater calculations incorporate future impervious area on that property?
That's a good question. The impervious areas of the driveway is included to withstand, it's included for the design of the open basin. The only thing is like as I said, the roof runoff will need its own separate drywall system. But the driveway is included in the calculations.
Which may be fine
But we
if
should-
that,
we should-
right, if that can be, if that is, if it's capable, right? Because if it's not capable, then the next, you sell this property, right, you develop all this, you sell this property, they're gonna come back to us and say, you know, we've got this property, they can't do this, we're gonna have to do X, Y, and Z, we're gonna have to, right, like, it's gotta be planned.
Somehow we need to plan for something.
Something,
here.
yeah.
These,
Change in the
yeah, these
Yeah.
plans have to assume there's gonna be a house there.
Yeah,
Or, right, there's an easement saying there's not gonna be a house there, ever, right? One of the two.
does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments that haven't been yet touched upon?
No, not to me.
There is that riprap that's basically right on the border of the properties in the background. And I don't see how you're storing all of the stormwater on this site if your riprap is basically gonna be dumping it into the neighbor.
That's in a really extreme case, 100-year storm or whatever, but the majority of the time, probably 99% of the time throughout a 100-year span, that's really not going to be used. So, and when it does, it's a very minimal flow. It's not a high flow at all. And I can get those numbers for you if you would like.
Well, I thought the rules were you had to keep up to 100-year storm on property.
You need to keep you need to have the pre and post peak flow rates match. So they do match. They're lower. They're actually improved in the post construction conditions.
It just seems strange that you wouldn't have that riprap dumping onto the current property as well, instead of right next to the neighbors. Especially, is that a retaining wall on the back?
That's a stone wall. It's not a retaining wall. So the reason why it's closer to the property line is due to the topography, right? So if we were to shift this, in this case, that's to the west, right? If we were to shift this down, right now we're now at a higher topography, and so the pitch of this pipe would be difficult to discharge the water. So we had to kind of get a little bit further east, somewhat away from the property line, just so that we have that lower topography and we have the pitch of this pipe to discharge it. And that's why it's in that location. I mean, if I would have totally designed this so that it was totally away from the neighbor's property, but due to the topography, I feel that this is accepted.
But aren't you basically shaping the topography yourself? I mean, you've already lowered the cul-de-sac by 3 feet. You're building in the retention pond. Aren't you just changing all the topography all over the place anyhow?
There is, but essentially, this would be directed towards the wetlands, and so, we could make a second pond over here, but it might be a little unnecessary, because the peak flow rates are already met. And so just having that discharge going towards the wetlands is not impacting, it's an improvement.
But it's discharging onto a budding property.
But it's matching the existing conditions.
No, it's not, because you don't have a point source in existing conditions.
Yeah, it would all be overland flow.
And you don't have all the impervious area that you're creating.
The peak flow rates are lowered in the post-construction conditions.
At that one specific spot going onto that one person's property?
Or just overall?
Or just overall?
Just overall.
Yeah, overall, and I can get that specific peak flow rate, but overall, it's reduced in the overall conditions.
Except that the difference is that all of that flow, even if it's less flow, in a 100-year storm or a over 100-year storm is coming out at one place as opposed to sheeting across the whole area. So, and it's coming across right at that abutter's property. And I know that there's conservation land kitty corn from it, but that's, if I recall, that was one of the big concerns we heard from the abutters in the original hearing. I can't remember exactly, but that's it is going right onto the neighbor's property in a very concentrated way, right?
It is concentrated, but like I said, you know, the post-construction conditions are lesser than the existing conditions, so, and it's being directed towards the wetlands.
Let me just say that you've heard the board concerns about dumping stormwater on neighboring properties, and since you're gonna have to go back and look at your designs again, I would take it under advisement to minimize that as much as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, and I noticed the engineer's memo also notes that Mass DEP regulations simply may not allow for discharge within 10 feet of a property line. So that's among the things that we'll need to have a response on.
Okay.
And my other question is, and I don't know why you would do it, you're leaving the shed with an easement?
Yes, this shed right here.
That makes no sense for a project this size to save what? $4,000 to keep one shed instead of rebuilding it somewhere?
No, this homeowner wants to keep it. She was adamant on keeping the shed. She did not want it moved.
So the property itself is not subdividing off of that homeowner, correct?
It is, no, it's already subdivided, and this land, lots 2, 3, and 4 have been, they're not owned by this owner right here anymore.
Anymore. So originally lot 1 was part of the original subdivision.
Yes.
So part of the sale included keeping the shed.
Yes, yeah,
That was a condition on the sale that they get to keep the shed.
that is correct.
Even though it's now on someone else's property. I can't imagine that logic whatsoever. That the homeowner wouldn't let you build them a new shed.
Luckily, we don't have to get into that. We can let our imaginations
Well, I wanna make sure the
run wild.
shed is not, 20 feet from the property line, that is properly adjusted? Or is the shed trying to be kept there because it's a pre-existing condition and wouldn't meet current requirements?
Maybe. Okay, any other questions? So it seems like we're going to continue this hearing, yes?
Yes.
When do you think you'd be ready to come back?
I would say in a month, so June.
So our next meeting is June 12th, and I would need a submittal by the end of May 31st at the latest.
Okay. So June 12th. Will be an extension.
So is that doable?
Yes, that is doable.
Okay. Should we take a motion to?
Now,
Oh,
I'm
yes?
sorry, but I do have another question. So now, because the previous approved plan, right, the endorsed plan, that's coming up on its expiration, and I think it's August of this year. So is there a way that we can extend that approval? I don't know exactly how to go about that, but just so that we make sure that it's still valid and whatnot. So Andrew, I mean, how do we go about extending that that previously approved plan?
Yeah, I think it's a separate discussion and potential vote than the modification plan,
Okay.
so we can potentially line that up for the June meeting.
Okay.
To look at if an extension and what date that's extending from. I believe it's a year period, off the top of my head, but yeah. Let me look into that.
Andrew, am I correct in the assumption that an extension is required because no development has started?
That is correct.
Okay, so nothing has been built, the roadway hasn't been lowered, these are all design specs at this point?
Correct.
Okay,
And it's a good question on the extension on how potential modification also plays into that and what time period that allows for, so I have to look into that.
I would think it would be two separate
Same.
issues.
Yeah, they are. So the other thing to note on our end is this application came in the original endorsed application came in previous to our change to the stormwater regulations and general bylaw. We feel given the level of change based to the stormwater and drainage design that a stormwater permit hearing should also happen in June with this, and we can advertise such, and that general bylaw should be applied here, given the change to design.
So does that mean all in the same meeting, we do a continuance of this hearing, plus a stormwater hearing, plus potentially the extension?
Yeah, the stormwater permit requirements aren't far off from what's been submitted and being reviewed currently, so, there's a few extra conditions and ability by the Cpdc to potentially look at third-party consultants, extra bonding to ensure that the drainage design is built and so on. So we feel it's just appropriate in this case, given the major modification is specific to stormwater design and permit.
And the Conservation Commission does take a look at this, or no, not this one?
Not in this case. I do not believe they will need a review.
I thought that, I
Well,
thought we had a
not,
note.
sorry, I shouldn't say that. Conservation Commission will take a look at this, but not to the level of the stormwater permit
Okay.
ability.
Good thing we work here. So all we're doing now is continuing the hearing on this one, and then
Yes, yep.
having a lot on this topic at this project, possibly at the next meeting.
Correct, although you still may wish to open to public comment tonight
Oh, yes,
if you so wish.
thank you, yes, thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the public?
We'll note that Susan Karam in the chat said tree clearing and grading has been started, so that's something we can look into.
Okay,
Hello.
Do they have a pre-construction?
We have not had a pre-construction meeting for this
So-
development yet.
They're allowed to go out and start doing rough grading and tree clearing prior to having any kind of a,
I would advise them not to.
because I was at the site
Mhm.
today and, they've got stuff roughed out.
did that come across clearly there to the applicant? Are you still there?
Yeah, excuse me, what was the question?
Somebody, a member of the public noted that tree clearing and was it some grading had started and it was, there hasn't been a pre-construction yet happening? So there was some
I-
advice to not?
There's some prep work going on. I think it's prep work, but I'm not too sure what's going on out there at this moment.
There's equipment out there.
We're gonna follow up with that because we do need a pre-construction meeting and management plan prior to any site work, so we'll follow up.
Okay, that was helpful. Any other comments from the public?
Just an another comment that, yep, trees have been cut and digging is ongoing. That's from KY. I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Alright.
Yeah, a motion?
Yeah, I was gonna make a motion to continue public hearing for Grandview Road extension to June 12th
At 8 p.m.
at 8 p.m.
Okay, June 12th at 8 p.m. A second?
I'll second.
Second,
All right, thank you. We'll do a roll call vote. So Tony,
Yes.
Pam,
yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Heather, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving right along, we had another request to continue the hearing at 25 Haven Street for the 40R plan review there.
Madam Chairperson, do we need to wait one more minute for that one?
I suppose we should, yes.
Somehow got ahead then.
Can I, if we have a minute to kill, can I bring up a non-agenda item, just sort of related to?
I think
this?
so.
So, as you may know, in my previous, when I was a working man, I acted as the town engineer in addition to director of public works in the town of Hare, and I did a lot of subdivision reviews. And the way I did them, I wouldn't do something like this in a one-page memo. It would probably be about 5 pages. I would do it sheet by sheet on the plans and identify what I saw as issues that needed to be addressed on each sheet.
Oh, that could be really helpful.
And then the stormwater report, I'd have a separate review of that, and if they had any submittals also. So you really could kind of follow through everything that was submitted and see where the issues were. And as you're doing that, you kind of start to see the stormwater report says one thing, but the design says something that doesn't quite match up. And so it's really easy to follow that through. So I don't know if that's something that that we can have the engineering department start doing some sort of a report like that. But it's really helpful for the planning board that doesn't have it.
Yeah, if you have an example,
Yeah, I'll see if I can get,
it might help,
big one
and
out,
we
yeah.
can see what we can do to that extent.
because that's how you review the plans. You go through them
Yes.
sheet by sheet, and then and then I just sit down and type it all up.
Yeah, an example might be really
Yeah,
helpful to pass
I'll get
along.
one from
Yeah.
a similar or typical subdivision that we
Mhm.
do.
Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Great.
Alrighty, now it's 9:31. We can continue the public hearing on 40R plan review at 25 Haven Street. Is there a formal request that we need to read into the record or anything?
Do you have one?
Yeah. So we received a letter from the Latham Law Offices. Please accept this letter on behalf of 25 Haven Street LLC requesting to continue the public hearing on this application currently scheduled for May 15th, 2023 to the Commission's next available hearing date on June 12th, 2023. We hereby likewise agreed to extend the 120-day period under section 10.5.11.26 to July 10th, 2023.
Okay, any discussion?
No,
I'll make a motion to accept their, the request to continue to the June 12th to be scheduled at
9:30, please.
9:30.
That's fine. Sounds fine. Okay, a second?
I'll
second,
Alrighty, let's do a roll call vote. We're getting really good at this tonight. Tony,
Yes.
Pam,
yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Heather, yes. Wow. It's only 9:30 and we're not done with the meeting, but we have
We'll close
We are on
it in.
schedule though.
all of these continuances, we just have our whole meetings be continuances. Okay, there are some other topics for discussion. We have master plan thoughts and discussion, MBTA communities update, and a whole bunch of minutes. Why don't we just,
Andrew, I'm taking my minutes in tomorrow. Can I do that?
what did you say, Pam?
Andrew, I would like to bring you my mock-up of all of the minutes tomorrow.
If we were gonna vote on them tonight, I would prefer to have the amendments done before a vote.
All right,
So hopefully we can go through them tonight if they're not major,
Yeah, maybe we can do a couple.
a few,
But
yeah.
let's do the master plan thoughts and discussion and the MBTA communities update first.
Sure.
Okay.
So at town meeting, an instructional motion was passed to ask the select board and or CPDC to consider an appropriation for a master plan process in the potentially near future. So I think it's gaining traction and more light, so we wanted to gather some thoughts from you all, because under zoning bylaw section 4.5, I believe, the authority, 4.3, sorry, authority falls to CPDC to administer a master plan. So we've had some internal thoughts as to it and discussions, just very conceptual at this point of what a process could look like. We've taken a look back, so the last master plan was done around 2005, 2006. It is your typical plan from that period of time, 200 pages, lots of data. It actually covers a lot of areas where right now are broken into separate plans. That 2005 and 2006 master plan, for example, just contains what would be your HPP nowadays. It has housing data, housing stock, affordability gap, and so on. So in today, recent planning exercises like the HPP 2023, the Open Space and Recreation Plan was done in 2022. We have a net zero initiative plan coming up this summer spanning into 2024. We do our hazard mitigation planning update, the MVP planning update. So all of that are topics that could be considered in a master plan, but where we have elsewhere right now. And then we have other, what could be seen as could be updated plans, like our economic development action plan, which isn't really that far out of date. I think it was dated to 2022. Our bike, ped, and transit plan is kind of out to date, admittedly, from 2014. Potentially a few others around there that could be considered in a master plan as well. So I guess when we think of a master plan, what we could look to do and potentially discuss with you all, other stakeholders like the select board and public at large, could be, what would our master plan vision look like to date? Is it that 200-page report of data, new data, GIS analysis, technical analysis, and more? Or is it more visioning, conceptual, and needs that kind of are derived from these existing plans, and we can compile into a overall arching vision and goal statements related to the subtopics? So there's a few communities that have done them recently in the past, Somerville, Ipswich, I think Pembroke and Middleton, and a few others around the planning sphere have done them recently. We found costs, I think it was noted at town meeting, to be anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 to do a planning process, master planning process. And then there are potential grant opportunities with that, but we'd have to look at those timeframes to really consider what those could be and look like and the cost with them. And then also the schedule of a planning process, which could be a year to 2 years plus, sometimes seen in communities. So all of that is very high level thoughts, but we figured we'd start by asking you if you had any thoughts.
I'll say, so I think actually this is a perfect time to do this, right? We, as I know Andrew knows and others, right? This idea, this thought has come up almost annually for the past 5 or 6 years, maybe even longer. And because the thought was that it hadn't been the right time because we had so much of a change going on with different developments that without seeing sort of the impact of those developments, that any big master plan effort would be reactionary without really understanding what the change the town was going through actually would feel like. I think we're at that point or past that point now, so it is, it was said in town meeting, it's definitely time, And I think, I think John Sasso, who, introduced the one of the articles, I guess, noted like, if you go look through the old one, like check, we've done all of those things, so.
Which is pretty cool.
Which is pretty cool,
Yeah.
yeah, it is pretty cool.
In the town of Air, I think we finished it in 2020 or 2021, probably 2020, was before the pandemic. And it's kind of, it was kind of an awkward process because, number one, we didn't have a town planner, so you didn't really have anyone running it.
Yeah.
We hired a consultant who was really didn't seem like she was really into what we wanted her to do. She was doing it this way, this is how I do them. And there is a statutory process of what has to be put in, or and I'm not sure exactly what the requirement is and how that affects different cities and towns, but you're supposed to have a master plan updated I think it's every 10 years, and they have certain, transportation, infrastructure, housing, economic development. There's specific categories. And, like Andrew said, we've got a bunch of those pieces put together, but there's a bunch of pieces that are hard to put together. And so what I was trying to get the town to do, and we kind of did it, was make it something that people want to read and want to do, so that it's not complicated. If you want that stuff about the demographics and the history of the town and all that, you put that in an appendix, but make something that's very readable, very easy to implement. You have specific steps or SMART goals that you do. So there's a lot of cool examples of that out there now. And if you want, I can dig out some of them. Like I did a PowerPoint when we started the process of kind of where we wanted to go. And I remember asking the committee when the kickoff meeting, I said, if you were going to leave town today and come back in 10 years, what would you want to see in the town? And, and you start thinking about that's what a master plan is. You're visioning what you want your town to be. And different people have a lot of different ideas, but that kind of forms your vision of it. So it's a good exercise to go through.
Yeah, it is.
We do really have a good jump on
A lot
getting
of chapters.
Yeah, a lot of chapters, and
Well,
there's a
and-
lot of good work.
Yeah.
But we don't have it all, right? And I do think that, I think that, and I think I've noted it as these different plans have come out, sometimes that data, right, although thick and, cumbersome and everything, provides some really good insights and really good information. And so what I would like to see is those other pieces that we don't have, and that comes off the top of my head, like transportation, right? There's always a transportation component. We don't necessarily have that, and I'm sure there's a couple of others. So I think we need to fit those to do that, like, data heavy piece on that. But then, just like Mark said, like that umbrella over that all of those different plans feed into. to provide, because most people won't dig into those details, but we need to make sure that all of those, because I'm not sure they do. And Andrew, you're probably in the best place because you've had a good hand in those, but like, are all of those plans pointing in the same direction?
Right.
Or are some of them, a little bit off? And what do we do? Which one's more important?
I think that's one of the
Yeah.
key
And
questions.
I think that
Yeah.
really is, yeah.
I think what are the gaps? What are the gaps that would make it be a comprehensive, a master plan? And in terms of data, I'm just thinking about with the open space plan, we did a survey. Was there a survey with the housing production plan?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there was a survey with the housing production plan. I am personally really interested in, are each of these surveys, because I don't think any of them were random surveys. People were self-selecting how they responded. I'm curious about, the input that we got. Is that even aligning, or were people self-selecting their topic? So that's just kind of and that even in terms of a public engagement component is kind of an interesting starting point of, what have people told us so far, and that can help inform the public engagement component of it.
One of the things that was really interesting doing this was the public input. So we had a number of outreach meetings, and we had one, and I forget exactly what the process was, how we did it, but I remember it was in the school cafeteria, and we got a lot of really good input from a good cross section of the community. So, and that's really a vital part of the whole thing. And we had a public meeting that I called in on for the hazard mitigation plan. What was there, like 2 or 3 people on it? So it's really important that you do something to get people to come to
Some people
these
care
things.
about some topics more than others.
Well, I'm gonna say over the years, right, there's been some things where we've had more
Yes.
Engagement.
Yeah.
And I think, right, I think Tony may remember this, but at one point we had this thing called the World Cafe.
Yeah,
I don't know if you were in
I
town
think that
then,
was just
I don't know who
before,
was.
yeah.
But hundreds of people in the field house of the gym. It very well attended because it was touted as like a visioning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so it is possible. I'll chat on that.
I think it's a great time to bring it
Yeah.
all together, I really do.
I do think, though, we do, in terms of timing, I'll say 2 things, and I don't know how much you're, in air, right, that ended up, but just knowing sort of the level of detail that the expectation in this town, right? At $250,000 to do the kind of public sort of outreach that I'm sure would be expected it won't go very far. I do really think that you need to budget appropriately. I remember like the zoning, right, when we redid the zoning, like that cost, I don't know what that cost, but right, that was a big effort.
Yep.
And it had to have cost something
Yeah.
like
and
that. Yeah, and this should be bigger.
And there's something else to consider, and the instructional motion did end up being that the select board, in consultation with Cpdc, would recommend an appropriation.
Yeah.
So so we should be realistic. There's another component where I know that there are certainly grants that can help out. I'm under the impression that every year you were going for different grants for certain things. So, we need to be realistic about how much we're seeking for a grant to do this.
Right.
And I feel pretty strongly that we should seek a sufficient appropriation from the
Well,
town.
the other thing that I was just thinking about is, like as a consultant, I've done transportation components of master plans, and there's been individual funding for that, right? And so there if we want to first lay some of that data collection, figure out where the gaps are. Like there may be an approach to this where it says, okay, let's fill in those gaps, knowing that it's gonna be part of the bigger umbrella.
Oh, yeah.
And attack it
Yeah.
that way, because that
Yeah,
might be
gather-
an easier way
Gather the
to,
information we need, yeah.
that may be an easier way to approach it
Yeah.
anyways.
Maybe the first step is you identify a facilitator, someone who can, you form a committee or a work group or something and get a facilitator who's kind of driving that process. And then setting up what you want for a scope and a schedule, a public outreach program, and then based on that, you can start developing your budget. But keep in mind, we appropriate money at specific times. So if you miss this opportunity, you got to wait till the next opportunity, or you do little pieces. That's what happened in air. We didn't start with enough money. We had to keep going back, and that drags it out.
Right. So there is phasing potential that we've seen from Rentham and other communities that we'd like to explore a bit just to see how that process works. But as you mentioned, does drag things out a bit potentially.
But you could probably find someone for a fairly reasonable amount of money to kind of start facilitating the process.
Yeah, so in all honesty, I don't expect it to begin until sometime in 2024,
Which honestly
Which
is
is great.
probably good because of the next topic we're gonna
Yes,
talk
it's
about.
very
Because-
much related
Because
to
that's
that.
gonna also be another point that's gonna have a big impact on.
I think that's gonna
sort
be a
of-
real tipping point.
I think that's,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
I
they
think to
will.
your point, there's been a lot of change that we can go back on now, but there's a lot of change to come still too,
Right,
which makes the timing nice for a master.
But you can't stop and not do the planning,
Right.
Right.
but I think knowing that this thing, right,
Mhm.
because there's deadlines,
Mhm.
right? There's specific deadlines, and
rules
so
around
laying
that.
yourself to do the next thing exactly after those deadlines, I think would work well.
Okay.
Pam and Tony, I do wanna move on to the next one, which is MBTA updates, but we've been chatting so much here in the room. Did you wanna chime in on that at all?
No, that's the price we pay for being remote.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think, thank you guys. So I think our march is to kind of start conceptualizing what this looks like, what the missing pieces are, finding potential ways to find a scope and estimated costs associated with some of these things, and maybe potentially start considering what could be another ad hoc committee with CPDC, Select Board, and other stakeholders to kind of engage on this process and the undertaking that it really is.
Yeah, I could even see, not to micromanage how you put the information together, but it might be really helpful just to even have a matrix of what's included in a master plan. What do we have? Kind of some of the stuff you rattled off, but just at a glance, I think that could be helpful.
Sure.
Review the existing conditions.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can dig out some of my stuff.
Mhm.
I know I don't think I have it on my laptop, but I can see if they can send it to me
Mhm.
or something.
Great. Yeah, we can.
Because I pulled a lot of stuff together when we were starting the process with different town master plans and
Yep.
outlining things. And
Yeah, we can certainly chat with some
And
of
it
these
was
other
the same,
communities too on their process.
And we were doing the same thing. We were doing the, complete streets, MVP, economic development, housing. So we had all these different pieces that we were pulling together. So it's very similar, a different type of community.
But to go back to your original comment about like what should it look like? Right? Getting the data is important, but I think it's important to have, I'm gonna like the elevator pitch kind of a thing where it's clear, right? Where at the end of this, we know what are the priorities, like, I'll go back to my comment about the World Cafe, is that coming out of that, it was clear there was a vision and a push for a more active downtown. Because at the time, it was very sleepy, and that drove a lot of how this board approached things. and other boards and select board. And so having that, like, okay, what's the
What are we
vision?
aspiring
Yeah,
to?
what are we aspiring to in these different areas so that it's clear without having to go back through, 40 pages, but, having like, oh yeah, we want to try and do this, this, and this, in the next 15 years, 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I think that's what we're trying to figure out in these initial conversations is people's expectations for like high level visioning master plan versus like deep aggressive detail, right? And how much of each people are thinking of when they imagine master plan, right? Because you can go both ways, you can do a combo, you can just stay super high level visioning, you can have 200 pages of detail, and those are very different scopes with different timelines.
I think it's important to, I may not be answering your question well, but I do this sometimes. I think it is really important to come away with that high level vision. Personally, I think also go into some of the detail. I mean, we we have all of these different plans now. We have these many committees in town looking at, what do we do with Simon's Way? Implementing Birch Meadow, which is awesome. We have these many committees in town looking at doing different things. And if a master plan could help bring that, it's not gonna bring everything in town together, but bring it together so that when a new committee is formed, it's formed by being informed by what the grand vision for the town is. That may not be answering it. It's not just high level, it's not all weediness. I'm looking for something in between that can steer anybody who is seeking to do something in the town for the next 10 years.
What I don't think is, I don't think that we can keep it at that higher visioning level.
Right.
Because we have done some of that and it was good and worthwhile at the time. But that can change too much from year to year and be grounded in some opinions.
It can be interpreted in many ways.
Yeah, and it's not, I don't think it's solid enough for what we really need.
Yeah.
I think we need.
Yeah, I think we both agree, and you guys, we all want the recommendation to be to do a transportation master plan. We want something more grounded in the master plan than something like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't see in a master plan, we need to put traffic lights at this intersection.
Right, no, but you wouldn't.
You would say, we have, these are the main traffic routes and this is what we need to do to them.
Right.
But, the actual implementation kind of weaves its way down.
Yeah.
But, maybe you say, we build a tunnel under the town so that all the trucks don't drive up Main Street. It's that kind of thing, that you kind of throw out those ideas and see how realistic are they, what do you want them to do, and can we do that? And then worry about the details in the implementation plan.
All right.
Okay,
Noted.
so I was gonna say next really hard project, but we're kind of in the middle of it. Right. What? MBTA communities, we're on the cusp of being in the middle of it.
We
That's
are.
a nice graphic. Are we doing something
Oh
here?
my god, I just crashed my Zoom.
Uh-oh. No worries, I can manage the Zoom. Well, you need to share,
Tony's
don't
still
you?
there.
I know it says my Zoom is crashed, but I'm still in it. Hold on, let me stop screen sharing for a second.
I still have you in.
While you're doing this, I'm also remembering, I'll just remind everybody that is next week, the 23rd, I'm scheduled, I don't know where I am on the schedule, but I'm scheduled to give an update from Cpdc to the select board. And I have my notes that I had suggested. It was something like, an update on MBTA communities, something like we did just here. And the fact that we just did the housing production plan is, I think, what we're gonna do.
Yeah, so I'd definitely like to chat with
We'll
you,
do that.
whether offline tonight or later in the week, just on, we'll build the presentation and get
Put some
the,
slides together.
Yes, thank you.
we can review those topics
Yeah.
and slides and all that.
Okay.
I'm going to pass it to Mary. She did amazing work building a lot of this information based off the discussions we've had together. So happy for you to lead this presentation.
This begins a series of presentations we'll be doing from now until this passes town meeting. So this is it. Tonight's update is going to focus specifically on our engagement and research strategy, which we have been working on and are ready to present to you for comments, questions, concerns, and thoughts. Let's see if this works. Is it working? We are working. Okay. I think it's useful just to remind the group what's happened to date, which is a little bit, but not too much. The MBTA Communities Law has passed. In 2022, we received our requirements as a commuter rail community. In late 2022, the town received early technical assistance, and the result of that technical assistance was that they determined that none of the existing zones meet the requirements. And in January of this year, we submitted the action plan, which keeps us in compliance until we change our zoning. We thought it was useful again to just review what the requirements are. What's on the screen, just the way we're thinking about it, is that this is the bare minimum end goal that we have to meet, right? This number of units on this many acres in this area. As we talked about it, we think that Reading is in kind of a unique position, particularly as we've talked to other town planners, in that we have a lot of very plausible ways that we could meet this end goal. There are multiple scenarios that will get us there. Meeting this end goal isn't actually the difficult part. The difficult part is going to be having a community process with community buy-in that will allow this to pass town meeting.
Can we ask questions as we go?
Absolutely.
Can you define what a unit is?
So it's one housing thing, right? So it could be one apartment, it could be one townhouse, one
It could be one bedroom or studio or
correct.
4 bedroom.
Any number of bedrooms can be in a unit.
That's a good question. Forget it.
Well, isn't it specific for multifamily units?
It is. So it has to be at least 3 units on one lot. Those units can have any number of bedrooms.
So at least like triplexes.
Correct. Correct. As we started talking about these requirements and what we need, we came up with a series of questions. We're just like, what do we actually need before we can walk out to the public and say, here's our proposed zoning changes? I think the first piece that we need was that in reviewing all of the kind of like surveys and information, particularly as part of the housing production plan, they did a survey, kind of the other engagement that had been done in town in the last few years. We didn't feel like there was anything that was very strongly indicative of what types of multifamily housing is preferred in Reading. We didn't think that any of the stuff that had been done in the past few years was strong enough that we could point to it and say, this is the reason why we want to propose one particular zoning change over another. And because we don't have an answer to that and we don't know where people would like that zoning, right? We then can't go underneath it to the next layer of questions, right? There's the top layer of questions, which is what and where, and then the layer underneath gets into parking, lot sizes, dimensional concerns, right? All of the changes that we're going to have to make. And so it's not to say we don't have any information, but we don't feel like we have clear enough information yet. And then the other side of that, the piece of information that we need, so the one side is public input, and then the other side is the technical analysis that we need to do, right? And so just to talk about one of those things, right, is like lot sizes. A big part of the technical analysis that came out of the early assistance was discussing the mismatch in between existing lot sizes and what exists in the zoning, and the fact that many of the lot sizes in this half-mile area are significantly smaller than in zoning, which means that none of it can be developed by right. And that's just one piece of analysis that he and I need to do in order to prepare to even begin to craft the zoning changes that we would propose in public. So there's kind of the two pieces as we think about moving forward, which is engagement with the public and the information we need from them, and then the analysis that he and I need to do in the background to match up, to make sure that what we're putting forward makes sense. How are we going to get there? You'll notice that this timeline ends in January of 2024. We are planning this, we are planning our process as if we are taking it to town meeting in April of 2024. I know there has still been some discussion about whether we feel like that's the best town meeting or not. Yes.
I just have a question.
Yes.
What's the legal deadline by which we need to comply?
It is the end of 2024. So we could conceivably take it to November town meeting. Our preference would be to take it to April for 2 reasons. One is we'd like to have 2 shots just to hedge our bets. And the second being that the longer we wait, the more comparables will exist. So the longer we wait, the more other towns will pass it, and the more time we will have to spend explaining why we are not doing what other towns have done. And so I think this year we saw that the people who've already passed it in April have kind of like a first mover advantage. They're getting lots of press. They didn't have to answer questions about what other towns were doing. And as more and more towns through the process move forward, it doesn't behoove us to wait to extend the process any longer. With that said, so this is a high level overview. We've divided it into 2 distinct phases, phase 1 and phase 2. They're on the timeline like this, and I'm gonna go through them in a little more detail and explain what's in each one. We've constructed them to be very different from each other, and that is intentional based on our capacity and also what we need out of each phase of the engagement. So the way we're thinking about phase 1, so it's structured like a funnel, right? We're starting with all of the options in the universe and narrowing them down to hopefully the final proposal. And we want to bring everyone into the process at the top of the funnel so that no one comes in later and says, I don't know what you're talking about. What is this? My input was never asked for. We want to launch this phase 1 engagement as very broad. So we want to start also with structured engagement. So we're going to start with, we're launching a website, which is already up, which is our master FAQ about MBTA communities. It answers all of the questions that anyone would have about MBTA communities in Reading in great detail. We're creating flyers. We are putting together a survey. It's very short. It's 10-ish questions plus demographics. It's visual. It focuses, the goal of the survey is to walk away with actionable, usable direction about what types of housing and where in Reading people want them to be. From that survey, we use those answers to decide and discern which specific proposals we want to bring forth in phase 2. In this phase, rather than doing forums or doing anything else, we propose doing tabling at public events over the summer, as well as attending most of the commission and board meetings to let everyone who's already involved in town government to make sure that they are aware the process has started, to encourage them to take the survey, to push it out on all their own medias to their own constituents. We think doing the public events is also useful. We'll have a visual, kind of like a visual version of the survey with maps, with things you can sticker, talk about what's going on, explain the process, invite people into the process early before we're getting into the deep details, right? Right when we're still explaining kind of this is generally what it is, there are lots of options, come with us on this journey. And in this phase, we want to do specific outreach to downtown because the downtown will be an area where zoning change absolutely has to happen, and we want to make sure all the residents and all the businesses are aware of that well in advance, so they have a lot of opportunity to participate in the conversation. Yes.
If this is mostly residential, I question how much, I don't want to say outreach to businesses, but how much weight we should give to the business, since I assume it would be an overlay district and it wouldn't really impact the ability to have businesses in downtown, but negatively it potentially impact changing over from businesses to residential.
Businesses are a great opportunity to do flyering, right? The business owners engage a lot with the residents. I don't know that you make the solid point that the opinion of the residents who will be impacted by the zoning potentially is more important to us in the long run. But we view partially because we have stronger connections with the business community there, we view them as an entry point. If you engage with them, you can also engage with the residents that they know. It's a way to make sure that we're hitting people who are in downtown and to let everyone in downtown know that it can and probably will impact them.
Yeah. Nor do I think we want to ignore the fact that 40R could be under consideration as well. So
along with the engagement in every phase, there's also the research that he and I are doing in the background. And so each of these is structured too. So we create a suite of materials, we take out, engage with them for a few months, which frees up time for us to do research because we don't have to keep making materials and keep doing things. And And so over the summer, we'll be doing all the background analysis on the existing conditions that will allow us to then move into phase 2, where we will be presenting actual proposals in a series of public forums. So we'll take everything that we get out of the survey, out of all the engagement at the tabling and public events. We want them to be interactive forums, either with like in-meeting polling, maybe a charrette. We're not exactly sure how we envision them yet, but we want to announce them well in advance, choose maybe one a month. We're still kind of working on our timeline. And it would be kind of an iterative process where we present forth what we think is the best, and then we get further into the details with each meeting and finesse the language. And so that by the time you get to the last one, you ideally have pretty close to what should be a final proposal. This part of the process is super important to make sure that we have identified all the stakeholders and that they are actively engaged. And the main research during this phase is to make sure that as we iterate on the proposals that we're working on, to make sure that they continually check to make sure they will actually meet the requirements. Which leads us into the final phase, which is just saying we're going to present the final proposal, we bring it to you, we bring it to the select board, we make sure everyone's signed off. At that point, it should just be like a check, because ideally everyone has been with us throughout the process. I wanted to share this because this is how we're trying to think about the process, because after talking with some other planners and looking at how they structured their processes, we want to keep the conversation around this topic positive for as long as possible. We have no intention of bringing up any negatives about the process for as long as we possibly can. There are other towns who have produced very defensive materials, and our approach instead is to acknowledge that there are potentially negatives that come with adding multifamily, but that we, particularly at the beginning of our process, want to stay focused on the positive opportunities that this discussion could bring for Reading, which is that it is a really interesting time to consider where additional multifamily development could be placed in Reading. And we've structured our engagement proposal so that it starts with the survey, which is very broad and open. We ask about concerns, but we're trying to, again, just stay with like a positive tone for as long as we possibly can in the process. We also focused the design on us being productive, acknowledging that we are only 2 people, and it is a big lift for the 2 of us over the next 8 months. It is an aggressive timeline. It is a lot of community engagement, which is also why, as we meet with the boards and commissions this summer, we want to stress to everyone that like it is also your responsibility as people who live in the town to activate your constituents and inform your neighbors and let them know the process is ongoing, so that we can have a process that is community informed, community led, and hopefully comes to a positive conclusion.
So
Yes.
it is very, no, put that back, go back. Yeah, because as you were talking, I first of all, I like the approach. I think that's a brilliant way of getting to and addressing this, because I think we need to, right? We need to start at that high level of like, what are we really doing? But as you are talking, in the back of my head, I'm like thinking about how does that public outreach work? And I just want to throw a couple of things out there, and right, like, it is a super positive thing. I mean, and it has been, right? I'm going to say over the past 5-7 years, right? I mentioned about, making the downtown more lively. That was a part of the purpose of or sort of, not entirely the purpose, but one of the benefits of having more multifamily housing downtown, the unfortunate thing is, about a year ago, that there was
There's a backlash.
There was a backlash, yeah. And so we're coming right out of that, right? And so right, there is a negative tone already related to multi-family housing in downtown in Reading. And I don't know whether, right, and so that's one thing. The other thing is, right, like, whether this is something that we're doing or something that's being done to us, right? And how that measure, and it's a little bit of both.
It's both.
It's a little bit of both, right? And, right, because we can't, right, the message has to be communicated that this is not an option not to do, right? And so it is being done to us, right? But we also need to make the most of it, not only because it's being done to us, but because it's being done to us because it's the right thing for the Commonwealth, right? For the whole Boston metro area, like we do our part too, you know?
And everyone's doing
And and so like that, right, there's a lot of things there to wrap into a message, and I'm just saying all this because I think that beginning message is gonna be very important to getting good feedback back that sets the basis of the rest of the effort.
I'd like to chime in there as well, because your presentation was wonderful, by the way, and it made me want to do this. Feeling inspired. I too carry a little bit of the realism of our community members, our neighbors will know. We can go forth and say, let's keep this positive, and what do we want to do? I myself think of it more as this is something we are doing. If not all communities in Massachusetts, most communities, at least in eastern Massachusetts, because we are fortunate to be living in a place with, I'm just kind of riffing, I'm trying to stay positive. Because we live in a place with wonderful public transportation options, I put it in the category of this is something we're doing, how do we want to do it? As opposed, I don't want to kid any of my neighbors to being so overly positive to say we are doing this because it's the right thing to do. We are doing this because we have to do it. We have many choices. I love the way that you're funneling it out, because we do have choices in how we go about it. And I guess it's kind of like with your child, you know, you're wearing a bib. Do you want the red one or the blue one? If we can be realistic about it, I think that's very in our messaging, I think that will be very helpful.
I think for us, it's important to acknowledge that zoning is just one tool on the belt. There's much more work needed after zoning, whether it's design guidelines, transportation planning. We need the MBTA to do their job. So zoning is just one piece of the puzzle, and how we craft it and use it going forward is what's important in this conversation.
Yeah.
But I guess I'd love to work with you on that initial sort of the tone and the, not that I don't think that you can do it, because I'm, based on what I've seen here, right, you're like, you're gonna nail it. But, right, to have that other perspective, right, the Reading, the longer term Reading perspective, what we've heard and what we've seen through the years in the interaction. There's some other efforts that have gone on in town that just started on the wrong foot, and then like just couldn't ever recover.
It's after reviewing some other towns' like initial suite of materials, that was kind of what had us. We were like, we have to be very strategic, right? Because if the initial suite of materials sets the wrong tone, you're gonna have the wrong tone for the next 10 months, and that's it. So we are on the same page. Yes.
And I do actually, you guys both said it, and I should do one. But right, there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, there's a lot of ways to go about this in Reading, right?
Yep.
Which is good.
We have
You know,
choices.
we do have choices on how we do this. There isn't just one way to do it or one place to do it, and
there is a deadline.
There is a
there is a
deadline.
deadline, right?
And there
Which
are
is sort of-
repercussions
yes.
for not doing it. Yeah.
Correct.
That's
Right.
yeah.
This is the webpage, which is already in existence. I would encourage all of you to click through it. Please provide us with comments if you have them. We are not publicizing that this exists for a few more weeks, but we have soft launched it. Each of these opens up and gives you lots of detail about what is MBTA communities.
Is it easily findable on the webpage, or should you send us a link, especially if it's not being promoted yet?
It is here on the planning page,
Okay.
just on the side.
Okay.
I would encourage all of you to take a look through it, send comments, questions. We're happy to revise it. This is the kind of like first suite of questions we thought we should answer. And then I think as we start doing public engagement and getting questions from people, we'll start adding additional information. This will also be the home for all of the materials that we're putting out. And we're putting together a companion page that goes with this, which is summarizing all of the housing and demographic information that came out of the housing production plan. So we're working on some infographics and nice presentation of that information because it feels like a very relevant companion to all of this work. So people can go here, they can see all of that, they can see the numbers that underpin a lot of what we're proposing. We're still working on that. And we also have a draft of the survey we're working on. It is still a draft. But this is kind of what we're thinking. We're having some ranking questions, some choose all. There are pictures. It's meant to be easy. It's meant to be for anyone. You don't have to understand zoning to be able to intelligently answer it. We're asking, you know, what size of buildings do you like in Reading? A question about architectural styles. What would you like to see more of? Where would you like that? Short, easy for anyone to answer. We're happy to, as we finalize this, if any of you are interested in providing feedback, let us know. We're happy to have you review it, comments. We don't want to inundate any of you asking for your thoughts, but if you want to be really engaged in this process, we will happily engage with you. It's up to each
I'll
of you.
start off, that 3 family, you gotta change that picture.
This one?
Yeah.
Why?
That is the traditional New England 3 family that people do not, shall we say, enjoy. They'd much rather have the 3 townhouse style than a
Yes.
than a 3-plex like that.
I actually absolutely agree. I saw that and I was like, oh, that's not, that is a triplex. It's a triple decker where and it's probably because of where I come from. I truly, when I envision a triplex, I think of the 3 side by side. So I wouldn't separate automatically townhome from triplex.
That's one of the things we were actually going through internally last week, was because townhomes are a style, but you could have any number of them. Whereas the rest of our options are based on the number of units. And so when you separate out townhomes, people love them. And so we can discern that people would love any number of townhomes. Whereas if you ask about a triplex, I mean, we can ask a different style of triplex, but
I would call that a triple decker.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. And so you're not limited in saying, okay, if we're talking about this is about getting off on the right foot, that if forevermore we're talking about triplexes, people aren't stuck in thinking that we are thinking about triple deckers.
Okay.
That's a pretty efficient housing.
It's very efficient. It's very efficient. But and people may love it. We may be wrong. We may want to survey about, do you like a triple decker or do you like a triplex that is townhomes? We may want to
so
survey
I mean, it's the
on that.
limitations of zoning, right? Doesn't get into form too much, and it's limitations of some tools. If we can put multiple images and renderings to show what 3 units looks like in one question, we'll try. But I don't know that we can. So it. Playing with this survey,
we're still finessing.
That was my comment. Thank you, Tony.
And so, I don't know if you're gonna scroll through the whole survey or not, but it's up to you. We're still kind of working on some upgrading tools on it. Like if you choose triplex, you can then have a conditional response to question of where would you like triplex. If you choose triplex and 4plex, it's then where would you like tris, where would you like quads or something like that. So
isn't a lot of this, where do we have availability to build those types of, I mean, you're not gonna, tear down all the houses on Woburn Street to put multi.
No, but because it's not a mandate to build, so,
Zoning.
yeah.
Right, it is about zoning,
It's-
but why do zoning if you don't have the opportunity to build what you're putting in the zoning? I guess that's what you guys are doing in the
That's
research.
what
And
the
that's what
analysis
ends up
is,
of
right?
becoming what's a by right zoning bylaw for these developments and lot size requirements and setbacks and what, you don't want it to not be buildable zoning or
I just envision a half mile from the train depot,
Mhm.
not a lot of buildable space.
Nope, that's the problem.
Well, just so you know, I did some research. I found a 3-unit, looks like a single family that will fit on a 5,000 square foot lot, 50-foot frontage, 100 feet front to back, and allow for parking for 6 vehicles.
So I would love to chat more on that
So
and more
send that
about what
picture
missing
to
middle
them.
designs look like in some of these designs, but until we get feedback that that's what the community wants, I don't want to go too
Yeah,
far down
exactly.
that path.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have anything else you wanna do here?
No, but
I
just,
think that having that website, because I have a whole bunch of questions on
mhm.
what this is and how it works and what our options are, I think that'll be really useful for people.
Mhm.
Everything we hand out is gonna have the QR code that takes them back to the website, cause it's the home for our universe of information that we're producing.
So
Are
while
you guys going to the Friends and Family Day? And
yes, we are, so we
Yes.
are, so that's the next point is, yes, we're actively building the survey to hopefully release early June is the intent, have it run through the summer. We're building our workshop tabling, kind of what we expect to have as programming and mapping or visual exercises at those tables right now, so it will probably be in a similar format to the survey questions of lots of visuals, lots of sticker placements and mapping, but we'll be at Friends and Family Day. There's a few library events over the summer. There's some beer garden or town common events that we'll aim for. So recreation concert series. So again, we're only 2 people and a lot of these do fall on the weekends. So I can't promise every Sunday we're gonna be at the concert series, but we will pick and choose 1 or 2 of them at minimum. The Pleasant Street Center does lunch and learns. We're gonna be there. We might even be looking to program our own daytime pop-up events at like Washington Park or Memorial Park to meet people in their neighborhoods or similar. So there's a lot of work into it, but knowing that our old-fashioned forums hadn't gotten the outreach and attendance that we wanted, we find that this might be a better way to kick it off and get people to those forums in the fall and help them be aware.
One thing, if it doesn't throw your schedule off too far, there's Friends and Family Day. I've never been to actually one of those for the fireworks, but there's also that huge street fair in the fall.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
many people come to, and I heard you say you'll be doing this through the summer, but so many people go to that.
Yeah, so we are trying to figure out what the fall events, because there's the Fall Street Fair, I think
Yeah.
there's new resident open house, which is a unique opportunity to engage new residents. What those maybe a bit later in the process kind of pop-up tables look like, if they're the same questions, or if now we have a bit more detail we can add to and give them and get a different style of feedback or not, but will likely be there as well.
the economic development director in Air would do walking tours.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were like historic, or
Yep.
if there was a pocket park or
Mhm.
something, you'd walk to different sites and things. And, you don't get a lot of people, but you get maybe 25 or 30 people and they're all interested
Absolutely
in
right.
stuff.
I didn't think anybody, admittedly, when we did our public art walk for the electrical boxes at noontime, I was like, who's available? Who's gonna be there? We had 20 to 30 people walking with us. I was like, this is amazing. So you were definitely right, walking tours are nice.
I was thinking even parking yourself down in the Birch Meadow neighborhood, Birch Meadow complex on a Saturday morning,
Okay.
you'd get a whole different slice
Mm-hmm.
than you will at
going to a bunch of the things that you noticed.
And you
that
might
you
not
did.
even have to do it on a weekend.
Yeah, on a Friday, yeah,
On,
there's,
like, there are, I mean, you've still got Little League going, and I don't know if Little
Yeah.
League, there's still baseball games going on,
Yeah,
there's
there's-
still a lot of community sports going on, and
Okay.
you'll get a different slice.
yeah.
Those are good suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably finalize our list in the next couple weeks.
Yep.
And then send it back out to you guys and say, what are we missing?
Okay.
Who's missing?
And then, of course, with the survey and other things, we'll do our normal standard outreach, email blast, website, social media, town meeting members, boards and committees, the whole shebang. So, yep.
Great. That's super, thanks.
Yeah.
Tony or Pam, anything else? I don't mean to be ignoring you.
Oh, no, this is interesting conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe later I'll talk to Andrew and Mary with, about the survey.
Yeah.
I think going in at the number of units is probably not a good idea, since the number of units will be dependent upon the size of the lot.
We'll
I
talk
think-
with you about
Yeah.
this. We'll talk with you about this.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
Right, the intent is to understand what the, I don't wanna say vision, I'm trying
I
not to
know
use
that.
that word,
Yeah.
but where the community wants to go, forget about how to, we'll use the zoning to see if we can get there,
Mhm.
right? But the idea is first, what
what
are we even trying to
scale
get
of
to?
building,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I'm
right.
curious, is what the community wants compatible with where we need to go?
Mm-hmm.
That's something we are
We-
also
That's a
very
pretty
curious
important
about.
information point, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, I mean, that's what I heard
Yes,
through
yes,
your
that-
your discussion, is
You know,
first we gotta figure out what would the ultimate be.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I think we're very willing and able to craft the zoning to whatever that vision looks like, and that there are unique ways to do it that we can conceptualize and look at
Yeah.
in the future and that we'll figure out.
That's great. Okay, should we do at least a couple sets of minutes?
Please.
Did you just say please? Because they've been lingering, right? We really shouldn't do that.
I ran out of juice.
I have a question on minutes, since I didn't attend a lot of these meetings. Should I not vote?
Because we have enough, you don't have to. You can, but yeah, it's
Yeah,
fine.
that's kind of what I was, can, but.
Yeah, mine sometimes is dead, and now it's only, I still have a lot on. Okay, so we have December 22nd. Why don't we start with that one?
I did review those when my computer warms up.
Oh, you
I don't have
did?
any comments.
I don't think I had any comments. Pam, did you have any comments on December 22nd? I know you did a thorough review.
I did, but I'm looking at 12/12 and not 12/22.
Oh, you're right. I'm also looking at 12/12. It
Yeah,
says
that's what I-
2022. I'm
yeah.
just,
Okay,
sorry.
okay, on that same page, so, let's see. On page 2, last paragraph. I think imagination station should be capitalized, capital S. Right? Is that the name of it?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, it is.
Got it on screen.
Alright. Same paragraph, top of page 3. I'm gonna rip through these.
Yes.
because I've got- Okay, the sentence reads from the previous page, the improvements include updating the entrance to the park, cleaning up the area with updated landscape improvements, electric vehicle charging, and adding a second curb cut, I think it's from the road, not out the road. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
2 paragraphs down from there. it should read in the second line, there are 2 bollards that DPU has keys they can, and take out the word for, they can be removed specifically for blah, blah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Weird sentence as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And at this time, there are 2 bollards that DPW has keys and they can be removed specifically for. Got it?
How about this, if I may, Pam?
That's
Mr.
great.
Crucifoli indicated that at this time, there are 2 bollards and DPW has keys that can be removed specifically for emergency vehicles. I think
Yeah, anyway, that sounds fine.
okay.
Okay. The third paragraph from the bottom, same page, 3. Mr. Crisafulli presented on the new accessible paved walkway connecting the high school to Birch Meadow, period. There are some benches, comma, landscape improvements, comma, and lighting. And then the replacement of an existing blah, blah, blah. That's okay.
Got it.
Did that?
Yep, got it.
Okay. Here, I think we just need to add some words. Mr. Weston, this is second from the bottom paragraph. Mr. Weston asked about the location of electric and lighting poles that are directly adjacent to the new walkway, period. Mr. Casafali stated that updating the electrical connections, not just electrical connections, comma, and then the rest of that's fine.
Okay.
And that's it for me on December 12th. So, sorry, December 12th.
Okay, any other
Nothing for
changes?
12/12.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Tony, are you good?
I got Tony's already.
Okay.
Yeah, I already submitted mine.
How about a motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, do I need to do a roll call for this? I suppose so, yes, roll call because we're hybrid. Okay, Tony,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Mark,
No vote.
oh, that's right, you weren't there. John
Yes.
and Heather, yes,
Approved with conditions, of course.
yes, with the amendments.
Yes, as amended. Yep.
Okay, moving on. January 9th.
Right on page 2. Third line down, actually second line down, they are including them still as an added alternate or alternative, either one.
Got it?
All right. Fourth paragraph from the bottom, same page 2. Birch, last sentence. Parking lot from Birch Meadow Drive with a capital D.
Got it?
Okay. Yep, on that page. Again, Imagination Station, third paragraph, capital I, capital S. Page 3, last sentence. Capital P, Police, capital D, Department. To be consistent.
Got it?
Alright. this would just be a porcupine. Fourth paragraph from the bottom. I think we want to read it down to fifth line, I think it is. Mr. McNichol indicated that he was open to ideas to create a tiered type of zoning in that area based on lot size and.
Sorry, which page are you on, Pam?
Sorry?
Which page are you on?
6.
Section 6.
I think, yeah, the word should be allowable development, comma, all those, so AL, add that to the word though.
Sorry, can you repeat that, Pam?
Yeah. Fourth paragraph from the bottom, beginning with Ms. Weston.
Yep.
Mr. McNichol indicated he was open to ideas to create a tiered type of zoning in that area based on lot size and allowable development, comma, although.
Okay. Got it.
That's it for that one.
Perfect. Anyone else?
Okay, anyone else? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve as amended. I hear a second.
Okay, and roll call vote, Tony?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Mark was not on yet. John?
Yes.
And Heather, yes. How about February 13th?
We actually have 2 February 13th.
I have one.
But it's the same date, but they're different. Because one has
One probably already has Tony's changes.
first public hearing. Okay, this is 213, 213, 213. So one is.
Well, there's one with the file name is 313, but the date on the top is 213.
Oh.
That's an error. I'll fix that right now.
So
I presume.
that presumably the
I presume
313.
that's
The file name is the correct one.
yes.
Okay, so
And
Pam,
the
we're
date.
looking at the one with the file name, with the file name 213.
Good catch.
Okay, hang on,
Thank
let me
you.
go back to that one.
With the Birch Meadow Complex as the first item.
Yes.
Yes.
Which, oh, Birch Meadow.
I called
Okay.
it to order 7:33.
Yeah. Make sure I get this right. I didn't have any changes on that whatsoever.
Great. Anyone else?
I don't have any. We're really flying. Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion.
Okay, let me see. Vote Tony,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Mark was still not on, John,
The next one.
Yes.
Heather, yes. Okay, and the next one is March 13th, the advent of the Mark Wetzel era. And yeah, the date needs to be changed on that to March 13th.
Yes.
Any edits?
And I don't have any changes on that at all.
Oh, perfect minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Motion to approve then?
Second?
Okay, all those in, roll call vote. Tony,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Heather, yes. And we are gonna be all caught up in moments, April 10th.
Yeah. I've got some issues there.
Okay. Go ahead, Pam.
Under continued public hearing, preliminary subdivision application for 0 Annette Lane. Third line down should be 60 feet radius cul-de-sac. So there should be a dash between 60 and feet.
Got it.
Then the first sentence of the next paragraph is again page 1. Mr. Pandolf moved the discussion on to the revised actual plan and the proposed construction of the boardwalk for public use between Annette and Applegate Lanes. S on the end of the second. Got it?
Yep, got it.
Then, in the last sentence, the last 3 words, side dash by side, by dash side.
Got it.
Okay. On page 2, beginning with Ms. Emily Fox, who lives at 78 Martin Road, spoke, period. Begin the next sentence with she, lowercase b for brought. Okay. Second to last paragraph. Okay, first sentence. Mr. Chris Calabrese spoke from Zoom, parentheses at Deborah Drive, Bren, that's a better way of doing that. And was in favor of the boardwalk idea and, insert the word and, would like it to be a connection between the 2 roads, period.
Okay.
The first and.
That's what?
Just on the bottom of page 2, I see Andrew. I think we should change that to Mr. McNichol.
What did I miss one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
It's
Let's
hard
see.
to type all the Misters and Ms. in a meeting, okay?
Okay, under the second to bottom paragraph on page 2, the sentence should read, the road and house will remove some, but what about a yard, comma, etc., question mark. Okay. Page 3, very last line, second to the last sentence, based upon, insert the word upon, prior comments.
Where
At
is
the
that?
very bottom of the.
Oh, based upon it, I see.
Yeah.
Thank you. Got that?
Okay. Page 4, first full paragraph. I think we want it to be town with a capital T, standards. And that sentence should read, he also brought up the concrete curbs and that those aren't the town standards, et cetera, et cetera.
By the town, just take that one back out. Okay. Got that?
Later in that paragraph, it reads Miss Clinch instead of Miss Clish.
patch.
Can we rephrase that sentence?
Which one?
Which sentence?
I think that instead of those, he also brought up the concrete curbs and that those, he's referring to the planned curbs that aren't town standard,
Oh, right. yeah.
not
Yep, that's
the
fine.
granite, the not,
And that concrete curbs aren't the
Yeah.
town standards?
That's right, because
and it's questionable about what those are referring to.
Right. In that,
Can we go back to the first line on that page?
Yep.
At the end, you say, and are now eliminated runoff. I think the word are is up, down, right there. That word are, I think, is extraneous.
Yep.
anybody have anything else for page 4 or 5?
Paragraph 4 on page 4. 1, 2, 3, and it's the short one. The commission raised questions.
Mhm.
There was a discussion of which glasses, shouldn't it be windows, are see-through?
Which windows?
That was all I had.
Yeah, I'm missing an R.
Anything on page 5? I didn't have anything. Okay, on page 6, first paragraph. Let's see. Mr. Weston asked to clarify where they ended up with the sign package, and it was decided to remove the signage from the package and just wait until the applicant could remove the S from the word back.
No back for initial permit. Got it?
Yeah, I wasn't sure about the wording on this one. Under Oakland Road update, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph from the bottom.
Yep.
The very end of the first sentence, grant funding so they can start the public engagement process for Oakland Road at a higher, and I believe, broader level. Or
Mm-hmm.
and broader level, either one, that is more holistic. And that's all I have for that one.
Okay, a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
All right, move and second. We'll do a roll call vote. Pam?
yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Heather, yes. I think we did it. It's before 11.
Thank you for doing them all, but.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for having them all ready for us to look at. So I will take a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Oh, wait, not
No,
yet.
it's fine. I can pull you tomorrow. Just a quick update. We need to, in the next week or two, schedule what could be the last executive session for the 459 Main Street
Okay.
litigation. They are asking to schedule such, so, and a potential vote. So I'll pull you on dates tomorrow, but expect hopefully in the next week or two that we can get that scheduled.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you for that heads up. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we
And-
adjourn. Oh, wait,
Yep.
Andrew,
I'm so ready to
Andrew,
go.
do I come in and sign off on any A&Rs?
Yeah, should we,
Do we need to
before
sign
we,
those?
yeah,
Please.
before we
Before we adjourn?
Adjourn, we should probably just
Where are
sign.
they? Oh, they're back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go. Sign.
Pam and Tony, I will follow up on that tomorrow. I think it would be nice if you do have the time to come in to sign them.
Sure. I'll
Okay,
have it, yep.
I'll be here all day.
Or
We have next time. We have more. Okay. Amazing.
Just two?
Just have us.
Crazy. Good job by you.
I hope to never watch one of those YouTube videos again.
Shall see. Don't miss a meeting then. It's fine.
Okay,
Awesome.
there's been a motion to adjourn, I think it was seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alrighty, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Pam.